Yes, she's coming back.
Yep. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call the Appropriations Budget Hearing for the Conservation and Development Subcommittee agencies. I just want to welcome everybody. It's Friday night, and I hope everybody is ready. Senator Austin, you have anything to say?
Let's get this show on the road.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to say anything? Good.
Senator Austin.
Okay, thank you. All right, but with that, I would like to start with the first team that we're going to have. Patrick Langvin and Stephanie Fried from Warner Theater. And they are remote. Good afternoon, Patrick. Go right ahead.
Hello, how are you? Stephanie Fried is going to be speaking on behalf of the Warner for both of us, so I defer to her. She's on now.
Stephanie, you want to turn your, there you go. Okay, there we go. All right.
Thank
Go
you.
right ahead, Stephanie.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and members of the Appropriations Committee for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Stephanie Fried, and I am here as the co-interim executive director of the Warner Theater in Torrington, and I also serve as the chief operating officer for the Bushnell here in Hartford. I'd like to begin by offering our thanks to this committee and to the state for its support of the Warner Theater in the past. We have been the beneficiaries of state support, as well as funding through SVOG, PPP programs, and ARPA. This support was essential to our success in reopening in 2021 and has been integral to our ability to navigate through the evolving return of patrons to the live performing arts in our state. To be plain, our return from the COVID closure has been challenging. Over the last 12 months, the Warner has served more than 110,000 patrons. We engaged with hundreds of students through our education programs, and we remained a home for local arts organizations such as the Nutmeg Conservatory and MOMIX. We have enlivened Torrington's downtown and created meaningful, positive economic impact in our community. I've heard it since I joined the team at the Warner. When the Warner marquee is on, Torrington is alive. The Warner is excited about our future. Warner Board Chair Brian Mattiello regrets that he could not be here with us today, but asked me to share with you the innovative effort that the Warner has entered into with the Bushnell. Recognizing the need of all arts organizations to adjust to changing audience behaviors and interests, and the significant and persistent increases in expenses all businesses are experiencing, it was clear that the Warner's way of doing business needed to change. In this collaboration, we seek to leverage the strength of both organizations to ensure stability and growth for each through the creation of scale. As of August 2023, we have engaged with the Bushnell in a memorandum of understanding to explore the potential for a longer-term partnership. The MOU provides for principal leadership, myself and Patrick Langevin, the Bushnell's Vice President for Programming, in the role of co-interim executive directors, as well as a period of assessment to determine the potential for a shared path forward. We've done this work, and we are very excited about the vision for the future that has emerged. Continued support from the state is essential to the Warner's ability to live into that future. We recognize that the level of support we've received over the past 2 years will decrease moving into fiscal 25. We respectfully request that consideration is given to no further decrease to that allocation. This support is vital to the Warner's operations and therefore to Torrington's economic development. With the state's support and our bold vision for a bright future in collaboration with the Bushnell, we believe that our Warner marquee will remain bright and that our downtown and surrounding communities enlivened in ways that enrich our citizens, our local businesses, and the cultural fabric of our region. I thank you both for your support and your consideration and for allowing me the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, and thank you both for your testimony. Have a good evening. Thank you. Next, Hope Chavez. Ah, yes, you're going to press a button to turn the microphone on. There you go.
Beautiful.
Make sure you just give your name. There you go. 3 minutes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and to this committee. My name is Hope Chavez, and I'm the Executive Director at the Arts Council of Greater New Haven. We are one of the 8 designated regional service organizations for the state. We serve 16 towns, which is only 8% of the landmass of Connecticut. But according to the most recent Americans for the Arts study on arts and economic prosperity for our region, we contribute over 20% of the arts and culture economy of this state in our 16 towns. So I'm here today to first thank Governor Ned Lamont for the appropriation in the next budget for the additional $1 million towards tourism marketing. There's nothing I hear more often from organizations in particular about their lack of resources to do marketing efforts. So encouraging the state to amplify the programming that we're doing, especially as the Arts Councils move towards having a shared event calendar that allows for an aggregated database of what's happening arts and culture-wise across the state, is phenomenal. However, we do urge this committee to consider putting money back into the cultural fund and following the arts, culture, tourism funding roadmap that has been extensively talked about amongst folks on this committee. From my perspective, the main impact that we have and that we need to have, in my 6 months on this job, there are towns desperately wanting to have cultural districts, wanting to start arts and culture departments that are not New Haven and do not have the resources of New Haven, but they're in my region. And unfortunately, those funding resources often come from the state and they can't make it happen. And so we have artists and we have entrepreneurs in our region who are spending their time and their labor with often very little or no compensation to make these kinds of efforts happen. So I just urge you all to consider a more innovative and strategic approach to funding this sector. And in particular, I know our new slogan now is "Make It Here." So we can't make it here if we can't actually afford to make it here. So we'll bring folks in, but I seek your support in making sure that folks' livelihoods are sustained through increased funding. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Have a good evening. Next, we have David Fay, Michael Moran, Anthony McDonald, and Frank Tavera.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Moran, President and CEO of Stanford Center for the Arts Palace Theater.
I'm David Fay, President and CEO of the Bushnell Center for Performing Arts here in Hartford. I think Anthony's here. Right.
Hello, everybody. Anthony McDonald, Executive Director of Schubert Theater. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Frank Tavera, CEO of the Palace Theater, and it appears that I cannot make my camera work, so I apologize for that. Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and members of the Appropriations Committee, on behalf of our 4 performing arts centers, we want to take this time to thank you for your continued support with our designated line item in House Bill 55048, as well as the additional ARPA-related funding we have received these past few years, and specifically in the second year of the biennial budget ending 2025. We, as 4 organizations, are proud to report that the funding we receive from the state is consistently leveraged and maximized in order for our performing arts centers to continually deliver the high quality programming, educational initiatives, and service to our broader community, which remains in line with our collective corporate missions. Although things appear to be slowly returning back to more normal level of activity, we would be remiss in not mentioning that all performing arts centers, as well as cultural institutions across the state, continue to face a number of challenges. While patrons are returning to live entertainment in our venues, the data shows patrons are still experiencing consumer hesitancy related to financial concerns, health concerns, safety concerns, or just lifestyle choices. The lagging attendance exacerbated by a reduced workforce in our downtowns, decreased corporate support, increasing production and operational costs pose a challenge to our historic venues. And to that end, the support we receive from the state is not only important, it is vital. As performing arts centers, we are relied upon to present events in order to drive foot traffic to our restaurants and our hotels in our downtowns and communities, as we often serve as catalysts for their success and occupancy on show nights. As institutions with educational programs, our performing arts centers are sometimes the only educational and arts outlet for students within the community, as school systems continue to decrease funding in the arts as well. As resident homes to many smaller local arts organizations, it's incumbent on us to provide reduced rental rates, affordable cost structures, so that we can help them sustain those arts organizations and ensure that our smaller artistic partners both thrive and succeed. We share this with you so you can appreciate how important performing arts like ours are to the fabric of our downtowns, the communities we serve, and the economic and cultural vitality of our state, and to illustrate how the investment you have continued to make in our organizations continues to go way beyond just our 4 performing arts centers. Finally, as this and other legislative committees consider increased funding opportunities to enhance state tourism, which we fully support, it's important to note that our 4 venues, in addition to our partners at the Guard in New London, the Warner in Torrington, serve as integral in-state tourism destinations, with 88% of our patrons coming from in-state. As consumer habits continue to change and the state actively promotes the idea of staycations, enhancing support of our venues through additional tourism dollars would be appreciated and appropriate. Again, we thank you and the governor for your continued support and hope that we can continue to count on that as we move forward.
Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you for your testimony. Anybody else going to say anything, or I'm assuming you're all speaking from one voice? Okay, thank you very much, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I'll tell you we'll go at 9:30.
Next, we have Stephanie Boyce.
Rather piss her off.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and other representatives. My name is Stephanie Boyce, and I am the Director of Homeless Prevention Outreach and Food Access Programs at Hands on Hartford. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today in favor of House Bill number 5048. Connecticut is experiencing a historic rise in the rate of homelessness. Since 2021, the number of people experiencing homelessness has gone up by 14% year over year. As of February 13th, there were close to 5,000 people experiencing some form of homelessness in Connecticut. As of January 29th, there were over 940 people sleeping outdoors, with many turned away due to lack of capacity in shelters and warming centers. Connecticut's homeless response system, nonprofit organizations, and staff are at the front line of this humanitarian crisis. But although our system consistently ranks among the highest in the nation, we are unable to meet the need that we see increasing every day. Year in and year out, our providers have not been given the reliable annualized funding we need to pay staff and to cover the cost of operations, which hurts the services that all 169 of our municipalities rely on. We estimate that our workforce faces a $7.4 million pay gap. We propose that all staff should earn at least $53,878, a housing wage that would allow those working on the front line to afford a modest 1-bedroom rental. Right now, 82% of staff earn less than that, which then means that our frontline staff are accessing resources at various nonprofits to ensure that they have food on their table, as well as they're able to keep their electricity on and stay in their apartments. I urge us to begin to fund nonprofits adequately in order for us to continue to keep people alive. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a video? Okay, no. Okay, thank you. Noah Bloom.
Hello, Representative Walker, Senator Austin, and esteemed members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Noah Bloom from Neighborhood Music School, one of the true gems of Connecticut. The name neighborhood represents the type of deep personal connections we build, but our impact is far-reaching across the entire state. With the help of DECD funding, we have grown to become the largest arts education institution in Connecticut, serving close to 3,000 students each week and employing 200 Connecticut residents. Over the past year, we have expanded our financial aid program, providing tuition subsidies to more than 550 students. We have also grown our offsite programming to 10 locations statewide, including substantial expansion of the nationally renowned Dance for Parkinson's program. In 2023, we provided an unbelievable 30,000 hours of instruction, and that would be like running today's testimonies 6,000 times, if you can imagine that. Your ongoing support of Neighborhood Music School makes our continuing efforts to ensure access to arts education for all possible. So you can hear about this impact directly from our students and teachers. We have created a very brief video to share with you. I promise we'll still be within our 3-minute time frame. Ms. Keene is going to share that video for you.
Thank you. Ms. Keene?
I was able to come to neighborhood when I needed shelter, when I needed community, and the friends I still have to this day, and teachers I'm still connecting with, would not be the musician I am if it weren't for Neighborhood Music School.
I feel like I've never experienced a school like this before. As a child, I wasn't always recognized. Now, I actually feel like a person.
If I were to be left in solitary confinement, I'd rather be left with a piano than with a TV. Probably my favorite part about NMS is like it can instill passion while you're young, but there's this like lovely camaraderie. I mean, everyone's like accepted.
I believe that the arts are a weapon of social justice, because every time there's any kind of uprising, any kind of social change that needs to happen, the arts are right there.
I think that music is important for everyone in general, just because working on something that you don't always get right away is an important part of personal development.
One of the best parts of Vintage Voices is that we sing and dance and end up building a community, a circle of friends. The members of Vintage Voices became some of my best friends in life. It's like home.
Thank you, and thank you for that beautiful video. Have a good evening. Thank you.
You as well. Thank you all so much for your time.
James Perro? James Perro here? No, okay. Next, Robert Crett.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Crett, the Executive Director and CEO of the Connecticut Museum of Culture and History, formerly known as the Connecticut Historical Society. I strongly encourage you to add funding to the governor's proposed budget to fully fund the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Roadmap. The vision of the Connecticut Office of Tourism is to position our state as a world-class tourism destination that is vibrant, diverse, and inclusive. Connecticut is home to dozens of world-class organizations that are committed to creating meaningful and relevant experiences for visitors to explore cultural diversity and build new connections to our communities. When these two sectors, tourism and culture, are working in unison, the citizens and visitors of the state reap remarkable rewards. Sadly, the major challenge for both sectors is a lack of sustained, consistent funding to promote, grow, and engage people from across the state and across the country with these enriching cultural experiences. Few know that Connecticut is home to some of the nation's most dynamic arts and cultural organizations. The collections are robust, the stories are vibrant, and a solid infrastructure is in place. The only missing piece is the sustained funding to support tourism-driven marketing. For nearly 35 years, I've worked as an executive director in the arts and culture sector, and I can attest to the quality and depth of the cultural organizations in Connecticut is both rare and significant. It's time for Connecticut to embrace and bolster one of the state's most remarkable resources. I've had the good fortune to live and work in other parts of the country and have firsthand experience with the positive impact of cultural tourism. In Chattanooga, there were few tourists before significant investments in art and culture in the early 1990s and 2000s. Today, tourism accounts for $1.5 billion in annual revenue in the Chattanooga area. I also lived in Santa Fe for about 10 years, where the state museum system was created in 1917 with 4 museums. Arts markets and commercial art galleries emerged, and today there are over 12 museums, the Santa Fe Opera, and more than 250 art galleries. Tourism accounts for $7.1 billion in annual revenue in New Mexico. In short, increased tourism helps the bottom line for states across the country. In Connecticut, cultural organizations spent $606 million on payroll and business-related services, while audiences contributed another $350 million in event-related spending. That generated nearly $1 billion in economic impact, according to a 2003 report from Americans for the Arts. And according to the American Alliance of Museums, cultural organizations return more than $5 in tax revenue for every dollar they receive in funding from all levels of government. At the Connecticut Museum, recent funding from the Connecticut Humanities has enabled us to expand our service to residents across the state. Our Southern New England Apprentice Program increased the number of mentor-apprentice pairings. This program helps preserve important cultural traditions by passing knowledge and skill from one generation to the next. We meet people where they are, and we listen to what they value about their culture and history. We provide support and expertise in helping them document their stories and events that are meaningful to their lives, and we provide programmatic opportunities to share Connecticut's diversity with each other. This investment in arts, culture, and tourism can make a meaningful difference for people across the state and leverage existing resources for a significantly greater economic impact. We can do it here in Connecticut, and with your help, we have a roadmap to help get us there. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Brandon Bartel. Andy Bickering.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Austin, Chairwoman Walker, Ranking Member Berthel, and Ranking Member Nuccio, and members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is Andy Bicking, Executive Director of the Connecticut Forest and Parks Association, CFPA, the first nonprofit concert organization founded in Connecticut in 1895. For over 129 years, CFPA has offered testimony before the General Assembly on various state park and trail recreation, sustainable forestry, climate change, and land conservation issues. While I'm a newcomer to the state of Connecticut, my family's roots run deep. My mother grew up in Fairfield County, and I had the privilege of visiting my grandmother there for many years, exploring the woodlot and granite boulders behind her home. I'm guessing that many of you also have your own memories of special places. Perhaps a pond, a park, a beach, a trail, a stream, maybe a garden that inspires you today. In my new role as Executive Director of CFPA, I'm grateful to work with a team of professional staff, dedicated volunteers, and caring supporters that is working to extend experiences like these to all residents of the state. For generations, Connecticut's forests, parks, and trails have been critical underpinnings of the quality of life for all state residents, contributing meaningfully to water quality, recreational opportunity, public health, and our shared economic potential. These sites are increasingly popular. In 2021, more than 17 million people visited Connecticut state parks. That's a 50% increase over the previous year, making them the state's largest outdoor attraction and benefiting the tourism economy. Furthermore, conserving our forests, parks, and agricultural lands for future generations is both a powerful and a cost-effective strategy to mitigate the harmful effects of climate change in both rural, suburban, and urban settings. CFPA's 2024 conservation agenda provides a path forward to build on this strong tradition and further position the state as an outstanding place where we can all thrive and realize the hopes for the future. A top priority of my organization continues to be the success of the Passport for Parks program. We feel that this program is the most sustainable path to the success of the state parks. As you know, the state park system needs and pressures don't follow the state budget calendar, and the Passport program allows DEEP to manage the system based on seasonal needs. Passport has reduced risks of park closures, decreased wait times to enter parks, and makes these sites more accessible and affordable to state residents. In addition, we respectfully ask that you consider raising staffing at DEEP to adequate levels to accommodate the dramatic increases in public use of recreational facilities and natural resources. Commissioner Dykes, who you heard from earlier today, and her great team are doing some remarkable work with the resources at hand, yet staffing levels remain low compared to the sophistication of work required. We also ask that you give attention to the state's open space pools, specifically bonding investments and the Community Investment Act, which you'll be hearing more from my colleagues later today. These investments are also critical for our future. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide comment, and I look forward to getting to know you all more in the future.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Next, Michelle McCabe.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle McCabe, Executive Director of Connecticut Main Street Center, and I want to thank you, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and members of the Appropriations Committee for the opportunity to speak to the governor's budget adjustments and request that additional funds are allocated in support of the arts, culture, and tourism roadmap. As I stated in more detail in my submitted written testimony, the health of this critical sector underpins many of the objectives outlined by the governor in his vision for Connecticut, and all plays out in our main streets, downtowns, and village centers and communities of all sizes. Arts and culture bring vibrancy to our communities and drives economic activity and foot traffic for our small businesses, creates jobs, attracts residents and tourists, brings the community together to combat loneliness, isolation, and enmity, and provides us with the quality of life that we all treasure. I want to emphasize the specific importance of directing more funding to the Connecticut Cultural Fund. The disbursements from the Cultural Fund in fiscal year 23 demonstrated the unprecedented reach of this effort, supporting over 80 BIPOC-led organizations and over 400 artists and organizations in over 150 towns and cities that otherwise would struggle to be seen. I urge you to build upon these successes and Connecticut's growing reputation among artists, playwrights, composers, musicians, choreographers, and performers that this is the place to create and innovate. Among future residents that our small towns, suburbs, and cities all boast a thriving arts and culture ecosystem to enjoy, and among visitors that Connecticut is a place to stop and stay, not a way station to somewhere else. With that, I also urge you to increase funding to support tourism marketing that can drive more audiences to more of Connecticut's towns. We are so lucky to have 169 unique communities, each with assets and experiences that deserve to be highlighted. In particular, many charming downtowns and main streets. Increased funding will increase visibility for all parts of the state. I thank you so much for your consideration and hope that you will support increased funding for this important sector to our main streets. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Next, Corey Gers.
Good afternoon. My name is Koray Gers. I'm the Chief Operating and Financial Officer at Mystic Aquarium. While we greatly appreciate that our line item is at 322,000 in the budget, our historical funding was at a much higher level. It was at 750,000 level back in 2008. We respectfully request the funding to be increased to 800,000 to help support Mystic Aquarium's STEM education programs that provide opportunities for children and families across the state. Energy efficiency upgrades to help us to reach our commitment of becoming a net zero facility, research and animal rescue efforts. Mystic Aquarium is one of the most impactful nonprofit organizations in Connecticut. We are the most visited cultural attraction in Connecticut, fourth in New England, and one of the top 5 aquariums in the country. We served over 826,000 visitors in 2023, of which over 50% of that came from out of state. The out of state visitors stay overnight at local hotels, eat at local restaurants, shop in local stores, and buy gas in Connecticut, all major contributions to our state economy. We provide free admission for underserved guests and high-need communities. In 2023, we admitted over 70,000 EBT cardholders and almost 100,000 visitors with the CT-free museum program from throughout the state. The annual dollar value of these free admission programs to the state of Connecticut is around $6 million. The Mystic Aquarium is the largest informal education provider in Connecticut, engaging over 150,000 people throughout an extensive list of programs. We serve Connecticut residents from preschool to adults. Our reach is beyond our local community. We serve 135 of the 169 towns in Connecticut. We have a robust animal rescue program that covers marine mammal and sea turtle response across the entire Connecticut coastline. Today, you'll be hearing more testimonies from my colleagues who will be providing more details on our impact on all the areas I listed. In closing, investing in Mystic Aquarium is an investment in the future of Connecticut. Our educational impact, community engagement, and contribution to the state's tourism makes us indefinitely valuable. We respectfully urge the legislators to consider our request to go back up to historical funding levels to ensure Mystic Aquarium can continue to inspire and educate future generations and help our great state's economy to grow. Thank you for your continued support of Mystic Aquarium.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Allison Tuttle.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, and all members of the committee for all you do for the state of Connecticut. My name is Dr. Allison Tuttle, and I'm the Chief Zoological Officer at Mystic Aquarium. I have been part of the nonprofit Mystic Aquarium community since 2002, and I'm so honored to work for an organization that leads the charge in ocean conservation, education, and research, and that serves over 800,000 guests annually. The support Mystic Aquarium receives from the state of Connecticut is vital to our mission and our impact. We deeply appreciate it. I am providing testimony today to request that the proposed line item for Mystic Aquarium increase to historic levels to support our important work. One facet of this important work is Mystic Aquarium's animal rescue program. This program is an important resource for the state of Connecticut. We hold the sole letter of authorization and permits to provide response for marine mammals and sea turtles in need of help in the state. We cover marine mammal and sea turtle response across all 600 miles of Connecticut coastline. The aquarium staffs a 24-hour hotline to which the public can report marine animals in need of help. And when we receive reports, we mobilize a team to assess the animal's condition. When necessary, we transport this animal back to our animal rescue clinic for treatment with the goal of returning rehabilitated animals back to the wild. This is becoming increasingly important given the human interactions and entanglement cases in these animals are steadily increasing, and given that the endangered or threatened status of sea turtles in our region. Since its inception, our animal rescue program has responded to nearly 2,000 stranded marine mammals and sea turtles. The data our program collects is an important step towards the development of conservation measures. Our program also engages in extensive public education and outreach in marine mammal and sea turtle natural history, conservation, appropriate wildlife stewardship, and the need to minimize plastic pollutions. We engage with over 500 trained volunteers, conduct public education seminars and classes, and coordinate beach cleanups throughout our coverage area. This impactful and important work costs the aquarium hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. An investment in Mystic Aquarium at historic levels would be an investment in the future of Connecticut, including the conservation of Connecticut's native marine mammals and sea turtles and the education of our public. I thank you so much in advance for considering our request.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Yeah. No. Next, Jeff Brown. You'll get me into a lot of trouble with all of our colleagues if I did that. Okay, I'm sorry. It's just that there are a lot of people that want to ask questions, and that would mean that they'd be here for a lot longer, so.
Good afternoon.
Excuse me, good afternoon.
Good
Senator
afternoon.
Olson, Representative Walker, all the distinguished members of the committee. My name is Jeff Brown. I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Wadsworth Atheneum Museum of Art. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide comments to this committee regarding the state budget and funding for arts, culture, and tourism. As the President of the Wadsworth, I want to thank the committee members for your continued support of arts, culture, and tourism in general, and for the Wadsworth in particular. Our arts and cultural institutions add immeasurably to the quality of life and the economic vitality of Connecticut. These institutions need your help. And as appreciative as we are for the funding that we have received, there is a great need to provide consistent and reliable levels of funding for these institutions. The support this committee, legislative leadership, and the executive branch have shown, especially during the pandemic, was crucial, not only for the Wadsworth, but for the immense diversity of arts, culture, and tourism attractions across Connecticut. We're here to seek your continued support and to hopefully expand that support and commitment for the fiscal 2025 midterm budget adjustments. The pandemic and its long-lasting impacts continue to impact the arts, cultural organizations across the state. A great need exists for reliable and sustainable levels of support, as I said before. We're enormously grateful to the General Assembly's support of the Wadsworth for the line item that was recently included in the budget, and this level of funding is incredibly beneficial and will continue to be in ensuring that our museum remains a viable tourism destination for Connecticut residents and for those visiting our state from beyond Connecticut's borders. We sincerely hope this line item continues into the future. As one of the premier art and cultural institutions here in the state, the Wadsworth attracts a great deal of not just local, but international press, bringing great visibility to the state. With upwards of 30% of our normal visitation from out of state, we're a destination site for tourism and positively enhance the local economy. The Wadsworth also provides stable employment and robust benefits for over 100 Connecticut residents, with a payroll and benefits expense every year of well over $5 million. Also, we continue to support education programs across the state as we entertain thousands of K through 12 students for tours of the museum. We also provide free bus transportation for underserved communities. Finally, the museum consistently delivers critically acclaimed exhibits, enhancing the lives of our visitors and advancing Greater Hartford stature as a place to work and play. The Wadsworth looks forward to working with members of this subcommittee, the entire Appropriations Committee, and other members of the General Assembly to continue to support our state's arts and cultural entities. Connecticut has some of the best museums, theaters, music venues, and other tourism attractions that are a major economic driver. The goal is simply to continue to support and further strengthen the arts and other cultural institutions, which are so integral to the tourism of the state. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Next, Maggie Dimmock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to members of the subcommittee. I'm Maggie Dimmock. I'm the curator of exhibitions and collections at the Greenwich Historical Society in Cos Cob, Connecticut. I'm present today to voice my support for the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Funding Roadmap, which makes a compelling case for the state to invest an additional $41.7 million in this sector to ensure that the investment made in these areas over previous years won't be wasted. The governor's proposed budget for this year has returned state funding for the arts, for culture, and for tourism to 2019 levels. Those were levels that were inadequate at the time, and they're only more so now. The Arts, Culture, and Tourism Funding Roadmap proposes increases that will provide legislators a clear and actionable guide to meaningful, reliable, and equitable investment in these vital contributors to the state's economy and workforce. In addition, I also would like to urge legislators to support any and all America 250 and Connecticut 250 commemoration legislation. This will provide support for historians, for museums, for educators, and civic leaders in commemorating and exploring the significant role that the state of Connecticut played in the founding of our democracy, and to increase opportunities for civic engagement for all residents of Connecticut. Funding that's administered by Connecticut Humanities and the Connecticut Cultural Fund has enabled organizations like the Greenwich Historical Society, to enact long-range planning and foster new partnerships that have given back to our community. Operating support that we received from the Connecticut Cultural Fund allowed us to maintain staffing, also enabled expansion of our free and low-cost adult, family, and school programs and community events. In 2023, the Greenwich Historical Society served an audience of over 18,000 people, and that included visitors to our museum galleries, to the National Historic Landmark Bush Holly House, researchers in our library and archives, attendees at our summer concert series and other seasonal outdoor family festivals, and over 3,000 school children and art and history summer camp attendees. The Connecticut Cultural Fund operating support and grants from Connecticut Humanities made it possible for the Greenwich Historical Society to offer free programs to students from Title I schools. They support compelling history and art exhibitions and programming associated with those exhibitions. These funds enabled us to continue partnerships with organizations like, for example, the India Cultural Center and the Asian and Asian American Studies Institute at UConn to present the My Story, Our Future Oral History and Exhibit Project. These funds also supported our continued work with the Witness Stones Project, our collaborator in honoring the lives and memory of enslaved people who lived and labored at the Bush Holly House. As we look ahead to the nationwide commemoration of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, recalling a period in history in when the people of Greenwich, who were situated on the borderline between the revolution-favoring Connecticut colony and British-occupied New York, found themselves on the front lines of an armed conflict, organizations like the Greenwich Historical
Maggie, could you
Society—
sum up, please? You're over the 3-minute.
Of course. So finally, I'd just like to thank the committee for their time and once again urge them to utilize the funding roadmap to ensure that the investment that the legislature has made in the arts, culture, and tourism in our state isn't lost. And thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Next is Amarise Williams.
Good afternoon. Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and members of the Appropriations Committee, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Amarise Williams. I live in Middletown, and I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut League of Museums in New Britain. I'm also a historian and a mom, and I serve on the America 250 Connecticut Commission. I'm here to echo Maggie's sentiments, the sentiments of many other people who are testifying today, to support the arts, culture, and tourism roadmap, as well as funding for America 250 CT. I've submitted written testimony that outlines the key programs and initiatives that the Connecticut Cultural Fund made possible in the previous biennium, both for our State Museum Association, which I run, and for the hundreds of organizations, large and small, that we support. But in the time that I have to speak, I wanted to share a personal story about what museums mean to Connecticut communities and why they deserve this meaningful, equitable, and reliable state support. So last weekend, my husband, 4-year-old, and I met up with another family at the Dudley Farm Museum, located in North Guilford, Connecticut. After buying whole grain sourdough from a Southington woman with a cottage business and greens and sprouts from a local farmer at the year-round market the museum hosts for the town, we trudged down a short trail into the snowy woods, where pails dotted the trees and smoke and steam beckoned us to the sugar house. As we warmed ourselves by the fire and drank cocoa from our thermos, docents explained how to make maple syrup and showed us the cross-section of an old sugar maple in which we could see 100 years of tap marks among the growth rings. We came home inspired and tapped our own maple tree this week. My son is keeping track of how much sap we've collected and eagerly looking forward to some homemade maple syrup. How lucky we are to live in a place where experiences like this are around every corner, and how fortunate I am to run our State Museum Association, helping organizations like the Dudley Farm thrive. That morning encapsulates what museums do. They foster community. They support local entrepreneurs. They inspire self-directed learning. They facilitate understanding. They make space for joy and wonder, exploring the woods, encountering farm animals, watching sap in the evaporator, playing in the snow. From art museums to zoos, these impacts still hold true, regardless of discipline. Dudley Farm is one of the over 500 museums across our state that are providing economic development, educational opportunity, and social and cultural benefits in each of our 169 towns. State investment in these places through the Cultural Fund unleashed their potential. With money to help them stop worrying about keeping the lights on and the roof fixed, they plowed their energies into new projects and hired local businesses to implement them. They increased museum employment by 30%. They more than doubled the number of programs they offered. They brought school children back in droves to support post-pandemic learning. Every dollar they received in operating support from the Cultural Fund led to a $6 increase in their overall budgets, a phenomenal return on the state's investment.
I need you to sum up.
Okay, well, despite these clear educational and social benefits, the good work of the past 2 years will be a flash in the pan without this meaningful ongoing investment in our cultural sector. Important direct service programs we run with our partners have already been canceled, and jobs and critical services are further threatened under the current budget. I urge you to support the roadmap so that museums like the Dudley Farm can keep moving in the right direction. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Kelly Fitzgerald.
Good afternoon, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Kelly Fitzgerald. I work at United Way of Greater New Haven and am a resident of Cheshire. For the past 6 years, I've been supporting the Greater New Haven Coordinated Access Network, and I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you all today in favor of House Bill 5048, an act adjusting the state budget. I've submitted testimony for your reference, but want to use my time to hit on a few key points. First, I want to celebrate the fact that Connecticut is a leader across the country in establishing a way for people to access emergency support and housing resources. State agencies, nonprofits, municipalities have come together to partner and leverage resources for our community. We have a system that works, but we need the state to keep its investments to match the growing need. As Stephanie mentioned earlier, a number of households are seeking emergency support, and that number continues to grow. She mentioned the 14% increase per year that we've seen statewide, and that number is 29% per year in Greater New Haven. And the 5,000 literally homeless households that we see, that doesn't even include those that are doubled up, couch surfing, or more broadly housing unstable. So at the same time, the needs of those entering the system are becoming more and more complex, requiring a higher level of skill. And I share these numbers just to give us all a shared sense of the scale of what we're facing. It's our belief that with the investments outlined in 5048, we'll start reconciling what has been a pattern of underinvestment in the homeless response system. While there's a number of items in that, I particularly urge the committee to continue investing in cold weather services. These are life-saving resources that will be gone if these funds are cut. In Greater New Haven, we were able to open 7 cold weather locations that function at, if not over capacity every night, but still leaving over 200 people outside in our local community. In New Haven, among the unhoused community, there's a saying that the emergency is tonight. And without state resources, the homeless response system will not be able to keep these services open. Passing this bill will ensure that our community will be safer tonight. In addition, annualizing the funds will ensure that locations and staff are secured to provide the most effective care. I can speak to when we find out in late fall that these funds are available, the amount of time it takes to identify locations, hire staff to be able to support this. And cold weather is a time that cans are able to engage people differently. People who are traditionally outside, but we're able to utilize their time in the warming centers to engage them in long-term housing and support services. Again, I'm proud to be in service of my community and part of the Coordinated Access Network system. And we have a way to end homelessness in our state, and passing House Bill 5048 will move us closer to that goal. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Kara Capone. Kara?
Everybody. My name is Kara Capone. I'm the CEO of Community Housing Advocates, an affiliate organization of both Mercy Housing and Shelter, and My Sister's Place, providing housing and homeless services in Hartford and Middlesex counties. Now, I truly appreciate the increases the legislature has been able to provide over the last few years, they simply haven't been enough to meet the needs of the people that we're currently serving right now. Given our costs since 2007, along with compounding inflation and mostly flat funding, we're still behind by 32% compared to where we were back then. We've been told year after year to do more with less. Like I said, we really appreciate the increases, but some of the impacts that I'm seeing as the CEO of an organization around chronic underfunding, has really caused trying to keep people employed. It's been difficult. State contracts have not kept up with the pace of inflation, resulting in our inability to not pay staff what they deserve, with some even qualifying for the services that we provide as housing and homeless providers. We can't keep staff who are leaving in droves for state jobs or are leaving the profession due to burnout because of understaffing. And it's constantly hard to train and retrain people when there's so much turnover in the field, and not to mention that it's just poor quality of service for the folks that we serve, who constantly have to deal with trying to work with and bond with a new case manager or a new support service provider. So while we struggle with the staffing and funding shortages, the pressures on and need for the homeless system continues to escalate. Kelly just talked a lot about what I was going to talk about, so I won't go into it. But we have seen huge increases year over year. Especially for Connecticut, we generally are able to work with folks and prevent homelessness. What I will say is that the population we're currently seeing is 55 and over and disabled. They're not able to work, and that is a huge growing part of the population that we're seeing in our soup kitchens and our day shelter. We also had in Greater Hartford 5 deaths of people living in encampments, and it's just simply not acceptable. We have the resources and the know-how to prevent this. We have the know-how to do it, but what we're really looking for is those increased in resources to get that done. So I ask that you support the $20 million of increased funding to housing and homeless services for cold weather emergency responses, shelters and outreach, diversion and coordinated access networks, and for a flexible funding pool. So I just want to thank you for your time tonight. And I know you're not going to ask me any questions, so I'll still put the offer out there just in case. And I'll also see you on Monday to talk about DMIS. So thanks so much.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Joshua Brown. Joshua Brown. Candace Barrington. Candace?
Hi.
Hi, go right ahead.
Well, I'm going to start off by saying something you never hear. Y'all were running fast, and so I'm out of breath because I was on my way home. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much. My name is Candace Barrington. In addition to being a professor at Central Connecticut State University, I'm also a member of the board of directors for the International Festival of Arts and Ideas, an organization based in New Haven with statewide, regional, national, and international impact. I'm here this afternoon first to thank the state of Connecticut for its longtime partnership with the festival. I'm also here to share our gratitude that the festival's line item funding that is still in place, and that the funding will allow the festival to plan and to grow. Because you've already received written statements regarding the multiple ways that Connecticut communities benefit from the robust partnership between the festival and the state of Connecticut, I'll speak briefly to one easily overlooked way that the state's investment in the festival is also an investment in our state's future workforce, the Festival Fellows Program. For over a decade, the Festival Fellows Program has given regional high school students the opportunity to complete a semester-long college-level course designed to develop their skills in communication and critical thinking. Offered through Gateway Community College and provided at no cost to the fellows, this course immerses them in all aspects of the festival. They meet the performers and speakers, witness behind-the-scenes design and production, learn about donor cultivation and community relations. They get more than a taste of what it means to put on a show. They get a feast of experience. In this way, the fellows gain marketable skills and invaluable connections that prove useful for future internships and jobs. In other words, the festival creates an employment pipeline from local high schools to jobs in arts management for students who might not otherwise imagine that possibility, much less reach that goal. So thank you for supporting not only the festival's work to present great art and provocative ideas, but also its efforts to cultivate the next generation of arts leaders. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Next, Luz Asuba. Luz, I thought I saw you there. Okay. Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and distinguished members of the Appropriation Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of the Corporation for Supportive Housing. I am Luz Asuba, Senior Program Manager for CSH here in Connecticut. For the last 30 years, CSH has been national champion for supportive housing, demonstrating its potential to improve the lives of very vulnerable individuals and families by helping communities create over 335,000 units for people who desperately need them. CSH engages broadly systems to fully invest in solutions that drive equity, help people thrive, and harness data to generate concrete and sustainable results. By aligning affordable housing with services, CSH helps communities move away from crisis, optimizing their public resources, and ensure a better future for everyone. In Connecticut, CSH has collaborated with the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services in monitoring and training multiple supportive housing programs throughout Connecticut. We also collaborate with the Department of Housing in our Supportive Housing Institute, which is our signature initiative. It is an innovative guided project planning forum for project managers, service providers, and property management staff that is designed to ensure quality, supportive housing production and implementation and successful funding applications. While CSH is focused on the development of housing as a permanent solution to homelessness, we acknowledge that the current supply in housing cannot meet the demands. In Connecticut, approximately 16,000 estimated units of supportive housing are needed as a subset of the greater affordable housing need. Many people are living outside, and the crisis continues to grow. This is challenging for people experiencing homelessness directly and people who don't want to see others suffering in their communities. The uncertainty of what to do tonight impacts us all. Housing is a necessity. It impacts our ability to effectively care for and educate our students, families to find adequate employment, and a sense of belonging within our communities and society. Further, spending resources on a temporary fixes does not make physical sense when that money could be reinvested into permanent housing solutions. We further recommend the following amendments to House Bill 5048 to ensure that interim interventions are connected to long-term solutions. Increasing funding for the State Rental Assistance Program, RAP, by $16 million, directly connecting to engage agencies with stronger outreach experiences, engaging vulnerable and shelter people, access to shelter, site and low barriers, flexible and cultural competence to
Luz,
address.
You have to wrap up, okay.
Will do. We urge you to make these amendments to House Bill 5048 to ensure that shelter sites remain an interim intervention to help address the immediate needs of people experiencing homelessness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Next, Ben Shaken. Hi, Ben. Mhm.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Ben Shaken. I'm the Director of Government Relations at the Connecticut Community Nonprofit Alliance, As you probably know, we're the statewide association of community nonprofits, and those nonprofits serve 500,000 people in need across the state. They also employ 118,000 people across the state, about 8% of the state's workforce. Over the last few weeks, you've heard over and over again from nonprofits funded by other parts of the budget and their critical needs, and you'll hear more tonight and on Monday. We respectfully request that you increase funding for nonprofits by 5% after providing the $50 million to health and human services providers that did not receive the DDS specific bonus funds in last year's budget. This is a total increase of $186 million. It includes arts, culture, and tourism funding for nonprofits and the state's homelessness response system. I'm going to focus my remarks tonight, just in the interest of time, on homelessness. As you've heard, the increases that you have all fought so hard for over the last few years were deeply appreciated, but they have been completely eclipsed by inflation. Just an example of the inflation: last year, community nonprofits received a 2.5% increase on state contracts. Just last month, the minimum wage index now to inflation rose by 4.6%. Nonprofits have lost ground even with those increases, and they will again next year without your action. The Connecticut Homeless Response System, which is run almost entirely by community nonprofits, needs a permanent commitment to increase funding for the services that they provide. After all the progress that we've made as a state towards ending homelessness over the last decade and a half, it's rising. And despite this increase, there has been no substantial permanent investment in state funding for the services that exist to bring people off the street and into housing. The state's budget is healthier than ever. This will be the 7th year of budget surpluses in Connecticut, and we're projecting a budget surplus of more than $100 million this year, next year, and every year into the future. These surpluses are occurring when there are real measurable crises in communities across the state, including a growing number of people who are currently experiencing homelessness. People in crisis and the nonprofits that serve them cannot understand how the state can continue to make policy decisions that do not increase their funding at a rate adequate to meet their needs when its budget is so healthy. The consequences are real. It's unimaginable, for example, that someone will sleep outside tonight because the state's budget surplus is being used instead to make debt payments. We can do both, and we respectfully request that we do. Connecticut's residents who use community-based nonprofit programs across the state need help now. So in conclusion, please support increasing funding for community nonprofits by 5% for this year. Thank you again for your support over the years, for your service to the state, and for the opportunity to testify tonight.
Thanks, Ben. Next is Denise Savage.
Good evening, and thank you, Senator Austin, members of the committee. My name is Denise Savageau, and I'm president of the Connecticut Association of Conservation Districts. I represent the 5 conservation districts that are set up under state statute. And they were really started to be a bridge between the USDA programs and local communities, and we continue that work. I've submitted written testimony and we'll summarize in 2 categories here. One is leveraging federal funding, and the other is the state water plan. Leveraging federal funding, there was a discussion earlier today talking about dairy farms. And last year, I brought up the issue of funding for dairy farms, particularly when we're talking about ag waste. This isn't something that usually is tackled by the Department of Agriculture. They focus a lot more on marketing and some other issues. And it really, we work very closely with the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, as well as Connecticut DEEP, on working with farmers on ag waste. Post-pandemic, the increase to ag waste systems for dairy farmers increased 2 to 3 times. So ag waste systems now cost between 0.5 and over $3 million a single dairy farmer. They just cannot afford this. USDA is capped at helping each farmer at $450,000, so we can't rely on them because of federal programs that are capped. So we have work that need to be done. The conservation districts were able to save $1.8 million from USDA that was going to be underutilized by the dairy farmers because it didn't fund the full cost of the system. And we were able to get $3.6 million in additional dollars from EPA. So between the money we saved and that $5.4 million for dairy farmers, to do this ag waste, which improves the water quality, including in watersheds that are public drinking water supply watersheds. Currently, there's no state funding for dairy farmers for ag waste, and I really consider that you look at how we would do that as you're working through the appropriations process. I just want to talk a little bit more about some other leveraging opportunities. We have the source water protection, that's drinking water protection. The districts and the Connecticut Council on Soil and Water Conservation, with a $330,000 grant from USDA, did watershed planning in the Farm River watershed as well as the Little River watershed. Those plans that were developed, we were able to then go to the U.S. Forest Service, and we have a grant for $175,000 to do riparian restoration and tree planting to protect these watersheds. And what we're looking for now is a local match. We need $175,000 to match. I just want to wrap up with funding for the state water plan. The state water plan, the Connecticut Association of Conservation District works very closely on that. As you can tell, we are working on source water protection. And this is a program that has not been funded. There was a request, never gets put in because there's multiple agencies involved with the Water Planning Council. And we ask you to look at Senate Bill 11. It's the governor's bill saying we need to update the state water plan, but there's no funding to do it. We need $1.7 million to update that plan. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at a later time. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a nice night. Up next is Nelson Rafaela Feliciano Roman.
Good evening, Senator Olston and Representative Walker. I know I'm about halfway through you and dinner and a nice Friday night off, so I will make this brief. Mil gracias. Thank you for having me. I'm the founder and visionary for the Afro-Caribbean Cultural Center, one of Connecticut's newest and one of the many innovative art and cultural institutions located in the heart of Waterbury, the center of the universe. Although our work is here physically, we do work throughout the state of Connecticut in Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven, and we have touched the lives of over 10,000 plus individuals in our last 4 years of existence who have come to our workshops, our plays, exhibits, our cultural events. I am a former recipient of the Connecticut Office of the Arts Artist Response Grant and one of the current Southern New England Apprenticeship Program mentors teaching folkloric Puerto Rican vejigante mask making. All this to say that I'm a direct beneficiary of the state of Connecticut investing in individual artists of color. And with my institution, the Afro-Caribbean Cultural Center, we are proud members of the State Office of the Arts Empower cohort model and a quick grant recipient from Connecticut Humanities, where we had an exhibit celebrating and honoring Latina grandmothers, nuestras abuelas. And through your funding, our Art and Local Tourism Commission here in Waterbury has granted us money. We say a phrase in Spanish, lo agradezco, which means thank you. The ACC continues to grow in our services and demands throughout the state, and our focused mindset is all about collaboration. We are underpinning this by saying that we have collaborated with many larger cultural institutions who rely directly on roadmap funding at higher levels, including the Connecticut Museum of Culture and History, Seven Angels Theater, Mattatuck, the Bushnell Palace, and the Greater Waterbury Arts and Cultural Collaborative. Similarly, cultural centers like ours, we serve as fiscal agents for up-and-coming Black and Brown organizations underneath us. We're the fiscal agent for Greater Waterbury LGBTQIA+ Pride, the Greater Waterbury Puerto Rican Day Parade and Festival, and Race. I'm here today as a queer little Boricua man of color to urge you and ask that you please increase funding levels to match the outlined roadmap for arts, cultural, and tourism. It's a critical investment of $58.5 million that will produce $3 of return on investment for every dollar spent by the state of Connecticut. Furthermore, I'm asking that please, when we're carving out provisions around America 250 and Connecticut 250, that we please earmark and remember and target specific dollars to uplift Black, Latina, and Afro-Caribbean history in Connecticut's historical celebration. I've attended a couple of those calls and want to make sure that we're truly sharing the celebratory nature of all of the cultures of Connecticut. By investing in supporting the roadmap as proposed at larger and higher levels, larger organizations continue to uplift and support Black, Latina, and Afro-Latina groups and artists like me and like the Cultural Center. Please come visit us at the Cultural Center. Visit our website, tainonation.org. Come to our social media. You're always welcome. Palante, siempre palante. And if you want to go to Acapulco, come see me. Enjoy your night. Have a great rest of your hearing and have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Up next is Brett Thompson, Frank Burns, and Jason Mancini. Okay, guys. Floor is yours.
Good evening, Senator Austin and members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm Jason Mancini, Executive Director of Connecticut Humanities, along here with partners Brett Thompson from the Connecticut Arts Alliance and Frank Burns from the Connecticut Tourism Coalition. Thank you for your engagement and support as we continue to seek meaningful, equitable, and reliable funding as proposed in the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Roadmap. I believe you're familiar with our request for an additional $41.7 million in our sectors. Here's why we know it's an investment worth prioritizing. I'd like to share with you some numbers relating to the impact of funding during the past biennium. $29 million awarded from the Connecticut Cultural Fund to our organizations. 724, the number of organizations receiving grants through the Connecticut Cultural Fund. 169, the number of Connecticut municipalities that benefited, and as well as 5 tribes. 86, the number of BIPOC organizations receiving funding, up from about 5 pre-pandemic. That's about 10% of our grantee pool. 10, the number of funded partners that are part of our cultural infrastructure that creates, preserves, and connects our cultural resources, expands our digital access, and increases professional and organizational development. 6, the 6-to-1 return on investment in the first year of the Cultural Fund. This has enabled improved fundraising and also us to tap into federal and foundation sources of funding. I'd also like to share some of the economic, educational, and social impacts of this investment. It has changed the future for nearly all of the small and medium-sized museums and arts organizations that have received this funding. With this, they serve their communities more effectively and efficiently. Our cultural organizations are businesses in our communities and on our main streets. Each has something unique to offer. We are connecting them with chambers of commerce and work to build more economic drivers and community anchors. Our cultural organizations support our educational institutions, curriculum, and are critical parts of our educational ecosystem. We have funded organizations in every one of Connecticut's Alliance and Opportunity districts. This funding also encourages youth engagement and learning, internship, and employment opportunities, and we are working tirelessly to keep our young people in Connecticut. In Connecticut, we're experiencing a new day, a renaissance, if you will. We have a robust partnership with the Connecticut Office of the Arts under Liz Shapiro's leadership and with the Office of Tourism under Anthony Anthony's leadership. This is a productive, collaborative relationship. Through that, we've accomplished a great deal in 2 years, and it would be a tremendous loss and disservice to our residents to turn back on these investments. I'll offer a final number, 2, the number of years until Connecticut commemorates America 250. This is a once, maybe twice in a lifetime civic and economic moment we can't afford to lose out on. And a final thought. The founding language of the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities states that democracy demands wisdom and vision in its citizens. For all we've accomplished with science and STEM, the wisdom we seek is rooted in the arts and humanities. Please support this investment. And with that in mind, I'll encourage all of you to read 2 recent New York Times essays, one by David Brooks on January 25th, How to Save a Sad, Lonely, Angry, and Mean Society. And second, by Laura Rakovich and Laura Hanna on February 10th, opinion piece, To Save Museums, Treat Them Like Highways. And with that, I'll turn to my colleagues, Brett Thompson and Frank Burns. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason, and thank you, Senator Austin and distinguished members of the Appropriations and Conservation and Development for this opportunity to share community input. I'm Brett Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of Connecticut Arts Alliance, a statewide membership organization representing arts institutions, artists, creatives, arts advocates all across the state. I join my colleagues at Connecticut Humanities and the Tourism Coalition in enthusiastic support for the governor's proposed $1 million increase in tourism marketing. However, we are concerned he leaves unchanged the state's investment strategy for arts and culture that supports just a tiny segment of the sector while starving most arts and culture organizations of funding. In contrast, you've just heard how the state's investment in the Connecticut Cultural Fund in fiscal years 22 and 23 reached broadly across the state and produced impressive results. We strongly believe that it is the fairest and best way for the state to invest in its cultural sector. I'd like to share some numbers with you to illustrate my point. The state invested a total of $18.5 million in arts and culture in fiscal year 24. Of that, 87%, or $16.1 million, was allocated to just 71 cultural organizations. Only $2.3 million was available for re-grants offered by Connecticut Office of the Arts and Connecticut Humanities. That means that about 650 or more organizations that didn't receive line items were forced to compete with just 13% of all funding. As a reminder, these are organizations that are not only making significant contributions to our state's economy, but are also doing important work in mental health, education, youth services, and more. To put it another way, the 71 line item appropriations averaged nearly $250,000 each, while funds available for re-grants averaged about $3,600. Fiscal year 25 tells a very similar story. This is why we are asking the committee to reconsider how arts and culture funding is allocated in the fiscal year 25 budget. Relying so heavily on line item appropriations not only penalizes organizations without the resources and connections to secure line items, but fails to maximize the state's return on its investment, which we know can be at least $3 for every dollar invested when the sector is adequately funded. Please take advantage of this opportunity to correct this lopsided investment strategy by reinstating the Connecticut Cultural Fund as part of the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Funding Roadmap. In a budget that is continually pressured for revenue growth, it is the right thing to do. Thank you for your time and attention. I'd like to turn the floor over now to my colleague, Frank Burns at Connecticut Tourism Coalition.
Thank you, Jason and Brett, Senator Austin, members of the Appropriation Committee. Happy to be here tonight. I'll make my comments kind of short and brief for the sake of time. I want to talk a little bit about what happened when we were funding the Office of Tourism at the $10 and $11 million mark, when we had ARPA monies versus what's currently happening at the current level of $4.5 million. During that period of time, for ending 2023, we saw an increase in hotel occupancy by 10%, which resulted in $1.3 billion worth of revenue here to the state. We saw an increase in 44% in people visiting CT Visit. That represented 9.4 million people. We also saw an increase of 3% year over year in visits to Connecticut. The other part of the campaign that happened during that time, people who saw the CT Visit marketing campaign versus those that didn't, 149% left in believing that Connecticut is kind of a vibrant place to be. 94% intended to visit Connecticut, and 57% took immediate action in making plans to visit. With that being said, I'd like to kind of comment a little bit on what some of our neighboring states are doing and what kind of an impact it has. First is Rhode Island. Rhode Island 7 years ago was ranked last in the country in terms of tourism spending at $700,000. This year here, they're spending $7.1 million. Massachusetts just increased their budget to $16.2 million. State of Maine has taken 2 increases within the last 5 years. They've gone from 12 to 19, and this year they've gone to $23 million. And lastly, the most impressive is the state of California, which was ranked second behind Hawaii last year. Hawaii spent $80 million. California was at $74. They've just raised it to $184 million that they're spending this year. So just some data and statistics for you to consider. And I'd like to kind of close and kind of share this with you. This is a publication called Edible Connecticut East. It's actually one of the better publications that talks about all the good things that are happening in the culinary world here in Connecticut. And this particular edition here is the winter edition, and it's covering Glastonbury, not Stonington, Niantic, and Willamette. And it's a great thing. This is kind of given out at the chambers. It's in most of the hotel rooms in Eastern Connecticut. And it's really a great thing, places to go, things to do, articles about it. And as I was kind of perusing through this, one of the things that caught my eye that I wanted to share with you was a 2-page spread by the Office of Tourism for the state of Maine, saying these are all the things that you can do in the state of Maine during the winter, and that their oysters here are better than ours in Niantic. All right, and wouldn't it be nice to have funding for the Office of Tourism to turn around and reciprocate to the state of Maine and put it in their Southern Maine Coastal Journal and tell them all the things we have to do here in Connecticut, and that Niantic oysters are better than what they have in Kennebunkport. So with that, I conclude and hope that you'll again consider funding the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Roadmap so we can get back at the state of Maine. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks, guys. Have a nice night. Up next is Marianne Meteleska. Mary Ellen?
Yes.
Sorry.
Mary Ellen, yes. No worries. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and esteemed members of the committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Mary Ellen Meteleska, and I'm the Senior Director of Education and Conservation at Mystic Aquarium. I am here today to thank you for the continued support for our institution and with a request for an increase to an existing line item in the budget to help support Mystic Aquarium's campus and efficiency upgrades in the STEM and environmental education programs that provide opportunities for children and families across the state. As you've heard from my colleagues, Mystic Aquarium is a key entity for the state with more than 800,000 visitors coming through our facility each year. We employ more than 270 people and engage many more volunteers. Last year, I personally engaged with more than 3,500 community volunteers in environmental stewardship actions that have led to cleaner Connecticut coastlines and restored habitats. But what might be surprising to the committee is what we do inside classrooms and communities in the field of education and youth development, engaging over 150,000 people through our extensive array of programs that serve every audience from preschool through adults. Last year, youth from 135 out of the 169 towns in Connecticut were educated through Mystic Aquarium visits and programming. These represented 270 different Connecticut schools and community organizations. 19,000 Connecticut students visited us as part of a school or youth group, and over 10,000 Connecticut students from distressed communities took part in our direct educational programming. These programs provide participants with educational content, mentorship, and hands-on experiences that lead to an increase in scientific and environmental literacy. This is critical in creating informed and resilient communities that we need now and in the future. This week alone, the Education and Conservation team welcomed students as young as 3 years old to our state licensed preschool. We traveled to high school students in Norwich to provide connections with Long Island Sound, hosted programming as part of our semester-long college course for students with learning differences, welcomed high school students from underserved communities as part of one of our 3 after-school workforce development program, and hosted more than a dozen of other on-site, virtual, and community outreach programs. As an educator with over 20 years of experience working with learners of all ages, there is no substitution to these enriching educational experiences. I've seen firsthand how these programs promote the development of skills to support new, effective watershed conservation and restoration initiatives, the continuation in pursuing conservation-based education and careers well beyond our programs, and have led to the engagement in local stewardship actions. We appreciate the line item for Mystic Aquarium continues to be funded in the proposed budget. This continued support is critically important to our institution. This funding is essential to support the aquarium's robust operations, including the educational programs, conservation efforts, and the increased activity and research, which profoundly impacts our students and community. It is for these reasons that we respectfully request an increase to the amounts designated in that line to $800,000. Thank you very much for your time and have a great Friday.
Thank you. You too. Up next is Amy Blaymore Patterson.
Thank you, Senator Austin and members of the Appropriations Committee. For the record, I'm Amy Blaymore Patterson. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut Land Conservation Council. CLCC is the umbrella organization for Connecticut's land conservation community, and we work mostly to support the 120 or so land trusts here in the state. I did submit written testimony in which I evaluated the budget adjustments through our land conservation, the lens of our land conservation mission. And so I'll just highlight a few points. First, we are so grateful to see that the Community Investment Act has remained protected in the proposed budget. And I want to thank you, Senator Austin, for introducing Senate Bill 105. And we look forward to supporting your efforts to increase the CIA fee. We are also pleased to see the authorizations for ARPA projects that were proposed in the biennial budget continued through in these budget adjustments, particularly those that support parks and recreation and other improvements to outdoor infrastructure. It's important that we continue to prioritize those projects and get those committed by the December 31st deadline. And we are happy to work with you in coming up with proposals in that regard. We were excited to see the new ARPA authorization supporting SB 11, the governor's bill, to help put the tools, policies, and other programs in place for climate response and preparedness. And we look forward to supporting that bill next week. And finally, to parrot you, Senator Austin, during the Department of Housing presentation, until I take my last breath in this building as an advocate, I will continue to urge appropriations for DEEP, and in particular, the environmental conservation programs, which are so critical to protecting land and other natural resources. As you know, Connecticut's facing the interrelated dual crises of biodiversity loss and climate change. It's impacting our community, but they are impacting our communities now, and they will obviously continue to do that into the future. It's costing our environment, our public health, and our local economies. Investing in nature will save us in many ways, now and in the long term. And once again, to borrow from what you said this morning, Senator Austin, land, water, nature, we're not making any more of it. We need to ensure that DEEP has the resources it needs in order to protect it. So thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Up next is Elizabeth Donius. Elizabeth.
Hi, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and members of the Appropriations Committee. I would like to thank the committee for their ongoing support of the Westville Village Renaissance Alliance, an organization central to the economic vitality and cultural vibrancy of Westville Village, a historic commercial district in New Haven, and a place that people of all ages, incomes, ethnicities are proud to call home. Westville is known and loved for its art scene and its strong community spirit. WIVRA plays many critical roles in keeping Westville vibrant through business recruitment, advocacy, and support, through streetscape maintenance and investment, through marketing efforts that define our identity as creative, diverse, and family-friendly, through public arts commissions, and through a formidable slate of community events, including our annual Westville Village Art Walk, now in its 27th year, the Hi-Fi Pie Fest and Summer Concert Series, the Giant Puppet and People Making Mayhem Parade, and the citywide Open Studios Westville Weekend. These events draw more than 10,000 visitors annually. In recent years, Westville has thrived and grown, and our ongoing efforts have been critical to this success. This past year, we expanded programming on our new public plaza, Central Patio, and that has transformed the pedestrian experience of the neighborhood, with weekly Tuesday salsa nights, Friday beer gardens, as well as monthly Westville arts markets that drive foot traffic and provide opportunities for local artists and artisans to teach, coordinate, and sell. We are grateful for the successes of the past year and mindful of the challenges that continue to bear down on our small businesses. We continue to recruit, support, amplify, and advocate for Westville while providing our vibrant community with opportunities to come together and celebrate in any way we can. Currently, we are working with city partners and others to ensure that the critical lot at the center of the village becomes a mixed-use development that incorporates significant public space. And moving forward, we hope to work with partners in surrounding districts to address the needs of our restaurant community and the Upper Whaley corridor. Thank you again for your critical support.
Thank you. Have a nice night. Up next is Mag Morelli. Mag.
Thank you, Senator Austin. My name is Mag Morelli, and I'm the president of Leading Age Connecticut, a statewide membership association representing not-for-profit provider organizations serving older adults across the continuum of aging services and senior housing. I'm here today to testify in support of the state's investments in affordable housing that are contained in the biennial budget and to encourage the intentional inclusion of the affordable housing needs of our older adults into that housing discussion. Make no mistake, is a growing demand for affordable senior housing throughout the state. Our 22 affordable housing senior housing members all report long waiting lists of hopeful residents. According to available national data, Connecticut has a significant number of older renter households that are severely housing cost burdened. The data also shows that these households overwhelmingly have incomes below 50% of area median and are thus eligible for HUD housing programs, but can't access them because of the long waiting lists. Severe housing cost burdens are also a key predictor of homelessness, which is on the steep rise amongst older adults. Nationwide, older adults are the fastest growing group of people experiencing homelessness. Our hope is that by raising the awareness of the growing housing need of our older adult population, we will be able to identify and act upon opportunities to increase the number of senior housing units and offer more adults the opportunity to remain in the towns and cities that they lived in or to be near the families that they love. That is why we are asking that the affordable housing needs of our senior population be included in the dialogue and that the development of such housing be encouraged when opportunities arise. One such opportunity may be to utilize state resources for pre-development funding to assist Connecticut senior housing developers who wish to leverage highly desirable federal HUD Section 202 supportive housing for the elderly awards. These HUD Section 202 awards are highly sought after because they provide 40 years of operating subsidy, so owners can serve the lowest income households, who are also the people who need help the most. Interested developers who want to apply for the federal awards must first have access to pre-development funding, and this may be a good opportunity for the state to assist. Just last week, HUD announced a $115 million notice of funding opportunity for the Section 202 housing program. HUD expects to make about 20 awards of up to $20 million each with this funding. This is the fourth consecutive year that HUD has issued national competition for Section 202 funding, and it may be a perfect opportunity for the state to establish a program of assisting local developers who wish to compete for these federal senior housing awards. The HUD 202 program is just one example of an opportunity, but there may be more, and we should be open to the prospect of other ideas, programs, and opportunities arising, which will ease the housing cost burden that is on the rise amongst older adults. In closing, we agree with the governor that we have too many people who cannot find a place to live. It is not available, and it is not affordable. We strongly support the state's efforts to address the housing needs of all of our state's residents, and we only ask that our oldest residents be included in that conversation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this evening, and we are available for any questions.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Up next is Danielle Cheeseborough.
Hi, yes. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak and for all the work each of you do across the communities in our state. I know you've already heard a lot of really worthwhile requests, and so I just wanted to share a few additional points on why I'm here tonight, humbly requesting that the funding for the Mystic Aquarium be increased. As the first selectman of Stonington, I've seen firsthand the positive impact that the Mystic Aquarium has had, not only in terms of tourism dollars, but also in the areas of education and environment. I know that many people find the Mystic Aquarium as a cultural or tourist attraction, but I was even surprised to find out more recently all the work they do in the areas of STEM and conservation work, how they reach people through the ages of as young as 2 or 3 years old, all the way up through seniors. What I also found really interesting in looking at their request was what the funding would go to, specifically improvements to their campus in the areas that will support conservation research, animal rescue efforts, and allowing for the expansion of educational programs. Specifically, I also wanted to highlight the sustainability efforts that they're looking to do in terms of energy efficiency, stormwater management, and also moving towards their goal of becoming a net zero facility. I highlight this because I think these investments will not only benefit the aquarium and those who engage with their programs, but also the aquarium will be able to help other organizations around our state learn from their experiences in making these efforts in the sustainability realm. I'm sure this isn't news to all of you, but at a time where trust in government and even trust in our fellow citizens is at an all-time low, one of the bright spots that seems to shine through is that studies are still finding that museums and cultural organizations are still seen as a trusted source of information. So making an investment to me seems very worthwhile in the aquarium, where they'll be able to show and then educate others on how they can move in greater effort and greater speed towards becoming net zero facilities or addressing floodwater impacts and all the types of investments the aquarium is looking to make with these state dollars. So in summary, I hope you'll consider this support for the Mystic Aquarium to increase from 322,000 to 800,000, and always available to answer any questions outside of this hearing. So thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Have a nice weekend. Up next is Christopher Regan. Christopher Regan, floor is yours.
Thank you, Senator Austin and committee members. I'm the chairman of the Eastern Regional Tourism District, represents 41 towns. And I also represent Olmsted Village, which we have 50 tenants. It's 100% occupied. In regards to the bill, I hope you guys consider to approve it, and definitely with the tourism funding is very critical. On the Eastern Regional Tourism District, we came up with in 2020 a public-private partnership, dollar match grants. And during that period of time, we have raised just the marketing in those 41 towns of $900,000 during that period of time, of which was $450,000 of private sector money. Also, one of the recipients was a collaboration I did with the aquarium, the seaport, and the village to do Think Mystic, which was to drive traffic to Mystic itself. In regards to the aquarium, my grandfather, my uncle, and my mother were instrumental bringing the aquarium to Mystic in the early 70s from Ohio. And can imagine Connecticut without the Mystic Aquarium. I don't know what tourism would look like. So I would respectively request that you guys really seriously consider raising their line item to 800,000. As an example, with our advertising with limited funds, we had a 16.4% increase in traffic at Olmsted Village in tourism. And that our total numbers are 1.9 million people that come to the village. So there's an economic multiplier that goes. So basically the ROI is the big thing that you got to look at, is what's the return on the investment to the state of Connecticut. That means heads and beds. That means restaurants. There's a multiplier that happens, and it's in the millions for the tourism funding, the return that we get back to the state of Connecticut. So I hopefully that you guys will consider increasing that line item and also get as much funding we can in tourism. I appreciate it.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Have a nice weekend.
That's it.
Up next is Jason Patlis. Jason?
Hi, good evening, Senator Austin and Representative Walker and members of the committee. My name is Jason Patlis. I'm President and CEO of the Maritime Aquarium at Norwalk. It is an honor and a pleasure once again to come before you on behalf of the aquarium and the specific line item that the governor has proposed for the aquarium. I'll refer to my written testimony and ask you to look at that in full. And I'll just summarize 4 key highlights in this for the few moments I have here. The first is the role of the Maritime Aquarium as an economic driver and a major tourist attraction for the state. We have returned to pre-pandemic levels of visitors at 500,000. And a new report commissioned by the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency has estimated the economic benefit that the aquarium provides the city of Norwalk at $56 million and the state of Connecticut as a whole at $89 million. A very significant impact that the aquarium has for the state economy. So the investment and the funding that the state is putting into the Maritime Aquarium is very good investment for the state's economy. Secondly, our education programs are among the state's leaders. We have about 65,000 students and children that participate in our programs from pre-K on up to high school and college. And those programs extend throughout the state, not only within our facility, but along the shores, on the water, in classrooms throughout the state. Our conservation programs are very significant, as well as we work on conservation for Long Island Sound and the broader ecosystem. And so the funding that the state would provide is a very good return for the state's priorities in education and conservation. The third point that I would raise is that these funds, more than now, are very much needed for the aquarium. As you know, in the past, for the past 3 years, the state has funded a wonderful program, Connecticut Museum, Summer at the Museum, which provided significant funding to a number of cultural institutions to support summer attendance. Without that program this year, it is up to the Maritime Aquarium to promote summer visitation, and these funds really help us very significantly along those lines. In addition, members of the committee are well familiar with the Walk Bridge project. Construction is fully underway. There is a myriad of impacts that with which we need to contend, given the construction is right next door to us, and the funds provide a very big boost for us to help navigate those impacts. The fourth and final point that I'll make is that this is level to the funding that the committee and the state provided to the Maritime Aquarium last year. It's consistent with what the governor is requesting in this year's budget. And so we're not seeking any increase at all. We're seeking a continuation of the funds that have been incredibly invaluable to our work and to the state and to our communities. With that, I'll invite any questions, and thank you again for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jason. Have a nice night. Up next
Thank you.
is Jeff Luxembourg. Up next is Matthew Morgan. Matthew Morgan. I'm sorry. Up next is Shelley Quiella, number 35. Matthew Morgan is there. Matthew, are you going to speak? Matthew Morgan, number 34. Shelley Quiella, number 35. Michael Morgan, number 36. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not looking up. I'm looking at the screen.
That's okay. A little bit of theater as we start out here tonight.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Austin and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee for your time tonight. So as you heard, my name is Shelley Quiella. I'm the Executive Director of the International Festival of Arts and Ideas in New Haven, Connecticut. And I'm here to remind you, as you already know, that public support for arts and humanities is a wise investment in the state of Connecticut. They pay back dividends, and we're very grateful for the support at the International Festival of Arts and Ideas. We are in our 29th year, founded in 1996. And since the partnership with the state, we have touched millions of lives. It keeps growing every year by the hundreds of thousands. We've connected people through cultural expression and have brought together resources, both from outside of the state, as well as government dollars in the state and private funding to do things that none of these entities could do on their own. So we play a really critical role in that way. We're very thankful and grateful for the funding that's in the proposed governor's budget. We are not asking for any changes. We're asking that it remain as it has been proposed and are grateful for that. I also want to just remind you of a few things to build on what my board member Candace Barrington said earlier about it being a place of education. So Arts and Ideas is often known as a festival. It is a festival. It's a huge festival, and it brings people together in a way that's very important, especially in this day and age. It's also a smart and, like I said, wise investment of dollars so that we can impact the economy in the state. We had an economic impact last year of nearly $3 million. We welcomed 100,000 people into the festival, many of them first timers to Connecticut and to New Haven, and saw people from 22 states, 53 Connecticut towns, from more than 22 states and 14 countries. So there's not only an impact on the folks that live in New Haven, but from outside of that area We saw a 10% increase in people with disabilities engaging in the festival. And we saw an increase in racial diversity that more closely matches New Haven's demographics and the region's demographics. That growth continues to increase as we move forward. It's also a place of job creation. And last year we had 15 year-round staff members. We had 150 people hired on the festival's payroll last year. And that's our commitment every year now that we're back from our post-COVID times. It's an opportunity for people that have never worked in the arts before to get their first experience. It is an opportunity for people to see what it means to put on live events. We actually had a lighting designer work with us who is a graduate of Hamden High School, worked in lighting and operations, and now is working with WWE around the world. So it's a place where there's a job pipeline that goes through the festival. But I want to specifically hit on something that's really timely and important. You might have heard that the U.S. Surgeon General has called for the fact that there's a loneliness epidemic in this country. And that was pre-COVID. It's now even worse as a result of COVID. There are very dire physical consequences for this in terms of health, with increased heart disease, stroke, and developing dementia. So organizations like Arts and Ideas that bring people together for free, create access, and celebrate cultural heritage are not only important for people feeling good, but is really critical for our communities to be thriving and to be resilient in this time. I'm grateful for a rich arts and humanities ecosystem in the state of Connecticut. And not only do I thank you for your support, but I encourage you to consider funding the roadmap for arts, culture, and tourism. I believe that we all win when the arts are invested in statewide. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to Matthew Morgan. Matthew?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I could not find the window for Zoom for a minute there. Good evening, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Vice Chairs Hartley, Exum, and Paris, ranking members, and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Matt Morgan. I'm the Executive Director of Journey Home, and I'm a resident of West Hartford. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today in favor of HB number 5048, and also in support of appropriating the $20 million in funding for the homeless response system, as well as in support of just cause evictions legislation. I've served as Journey Home's executive director for the past 13 years, and I write today on behalf of the thousands of people who experience homelessness in the capital region every year, as well as the thousands of people who are unstably housed and who are at risk of homelessness. Journey Home coordinates the homeless response system in the capital region, and we serve as the backbone support agency for the Greater Hartford CAN and the Central Connecticut CAN. We work every single day with street outreach workers, with emergency shelters, with rental assistance programs, warming centers, and hotels to serve as many people as we can who are experiencing homelessness. We work with more than 100 programs to try to prevent people from becoming homeless and house as many people as we can as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, we saw a 10% increase in unsheltered homelessness in the past year in Greater Hartford. The CAN structures have helped us to move to a shared community responsibility for the well-being of people experiencing homelessness. CAN backbone support agencies provide facilitation and accountability to make sure people don't fall between the cracks and to solve complex cases. We engage private sector landlords and find housing, partner with workforce development agencies to help individuals experiencing homelessness gain employment, and partner with financial opportunity centers to provide financial literacy services. CAN backbone support agencies provide disaster preparedness services, including cold weather planning, and we get the word out to all the partner agencies and people experiencing homelessness when the governor activates the severe cold weather protocols. We spearhead innovation and continuous improvement and use data to make informed decisions and to identify gaps. Our shelter system should operate more like an emergency room in a hospital with people flowing in and out quickly, but unfortunately it's clogged because we do not have enough rental assistance to get people out and homeless prevention services to prevent people from falling into homelessness. When shelter case managers leave, it causes delays in getting people housed during the time where we have to recruit and onboard new staff. So the longer people stay in shelter, the less capacity we have to accommodate others who are having a crisis, which results in increased encampments and unsheltered homelessness. Housing is a human right, and homelessness is a prime example of the failure of our society to take care of its citizens. So I'm speaking tonight in support of the 20 million, 5 million, including for cold weather emergency response services. We are at a pivotal time where for the first time, we're seeing families experiencing homelessness in Connecticut, and we cannot allow that to become acceptable. Our values as a state, and particularly a wealthy state, should not allow that norm, should not allow having to turn families with children away in the middle of winter. That should not become a norm. Our system needs to find way more rental assistance and homeless prevention to be able to end homelessness. So thank you to the committee for this opportunity to testify. And it's, again, just so grateful for all that you can do to help us to end homelessness in Connecticut.
Thank you. Have a nice night. Up next is Michael Morgan. I'll actually look up to see if anybody's coming instead of on my screen. Novel new thing. No wonder we're all lonely.
It's a Friday night, but thank you for staying to hear the. Good evening, Senator Alston, Representative Walker, and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Michael Morgan, and I've been a manager of the Taking Initiative Center in New Haven since 2001. We're funded by DEMIS, a collaborative agency staffed by App Foundation, Goodwill, and Marrakesh Inc. I'm from New Britain, and our clients at the center in New Haven are usually people who are homeless on the streets and experiencing persistent and severe mental illness issues and substance use disorders. We try through harm reduction to help these people. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today in favor of HB number 5048, an act adjusting the state budget for the biennium ending in 2025. On the need to properly fund the nonprofit DEMIS and DDS funded agencies. Our work to help citizens with housing, with maintaining healthy people and communities, and with helping people develop connections and have inclusive communities, all which are important to have a thriving economy. Nonprofits do much of the heavy lifting in the state to achieve the four core values of Connecticut's conservation and development guidelines. As you know, we need proper funding to continue to do this, but I'd like to talk today about help for the helpers. Our pay is not sustainable to maintain a workforce, and many positions remain open. We need real raises and COLAs. From fiscal year 2008 through fiscal year 2018, we received no COLAs or raises for our DEMIS contracts. In fiscal year 2019, we received a 1% COLA, but then it was so low anyway, and inflation since has really eroded all that. We help people find recovery from substances or at least use less. This saves lives and reduces expensive ambulance and emergency department medical costs. Reduced substances also leads to reduced criminal activity, which saves costs associated with loss of businesses and costs with the criminal justice system. We help people become engaged in mental health treatment, which increases their success at being placed in shelters or their own apartments, or increases their socializations with their family and community, and increases their employment and job retention. To do this, staff must really be skilled in many areas. They have to be familiar with substance use disorders and various treatment options, from self-help abstinence to medical assisted treatments. Staff must be knowledgeable in mental health disorders, especially trauma, and with an array of psychiatric treatment facilities and options such as outpatient programs and respite services. Staff must be willing to put themselves at risk when interacting with forensic individuals or people who may feel threatened by us. Sadly, we just saw this week in Minnesota how deadly a welfare check can be, even on stabilized housing individuals, or closer to home, what happened to Joyce Grayson. We do all this with TLC by being trauma-informed, positive, and encouraging. But as you see, pay has remained unchanged basically since 2001. Staff cannot continue to work for minimum or near minimum wages. So I'm pleased to ask you today to consider COLAs and pass House Bill 5048. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael, and the best to you for this weekend. We'll now invite Kellyanne Day from the New Reach Life Haven. Kellyanne?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening, Kellyanne. You have the floor, madam.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, Representative Walker and Senator Austin and members of the committee. My name is Kellyanne Day, and I am the CEO of New Reach, and I live and work in New Haven. Tonight, I'm here to urge you to support HB 5048, $20 million investment in the emergency services and shelter systems across the state. When I started in the late 90s working with people experiencing homelessness, there were very few interventions, shelter being the main intervention to get people off the streets, basically hots in a cot. In the early 2000s, the state began implementing supportive housing with the leadership of folks like Lucy McKinney for people living with HIV and AIDS, and Barbara Geller for people living with mental health and substance disorders. Providers were pulled together with housing developers. We were able to scale supportive housing based on the lessons we had learned. Supportive housing works, and we've been able to bring in millions of dollars into the state for supportive housing from our federal partners. That gave us 2 interventions. Then came rapid rehousing, again, born out of programs that were being piloted around the state and the country. And again, Connecticut scaled rapid rehousing. And again, we've been successful in generating millions of dollars of federal dollars for that intervention. Then came coordinated access, also known as the CAN. This work organized all of our interventions regionally and fostered collaborations between providers. Diversion from shelter, outreach, and engagement, also part of our system. Why this history lesson? Because over the past 3 decades, we have stood up a system that works with interventions that work with your help and our federal partners, and frankly, a lot of private investors. But costs are up, as my colleagues have already communicated tonight. The gentleman who spoke before me, our staff are underpaid and under-resourced for the numbers of people that are showing up at our doors. The number of units are down, and we simply do not, as nonprofits, have the resources we need to continue to stand up these services. Therefore, we respectfully request that the state continue to invest in the system that we were asked to put in place, a system that is working, and a system that you have supported, and we need you to continue to support at a higher level. Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much, Kellyanne, and thank you for the work that you do. I'd like to next invite the mayor of the city of New Haven, Justin Elicker. Mr. Mayor. Okay, if he appears, we will dial back. Next, we'd like to invite Frank Mitchell. Are you with us, Frank?
I am here virtually.
Yes. Hey, Frank, you got the floor.
Good evening, and thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Frank Mitchell, a CT Humanities board member and a cultural organizer in visual arts and public humanities. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Roadmap. Since this is Black History Month, I'm going to emphasize the Black in the history impact of this funding. I've been doing this work in Connecticut long enough to have concrete memories of the boom cycles. I wasn't around for the bicentennial celebrations here, but several significant Black history initiatives began that year, including New Haven's Afro-American Historical Society. That collection is now based at the Dixwell Q House. The 80s brought increased recognition of the Amistad story and organizations like Hartford's Amistad Center for Art and Culture. The 90s, the Freedom Trail, the Johnny Rogers Center, the Amistad Schooner, and a series of exhibitions on enslavement. As we approach the celebration of the nation's 250th, there is continued, and in some cases, new interest. None of this would be possible without the supportive foundation that comes through Connecticut Humanities. That funding inspired, supported, and strengthened most of these projects. And they have redefined the ways we think about this state's history, who lived here at its founding, what they produced, which wars they helped win, and how they and their families persevered into the 19th and 20th centuries. Acknowledgement of these people in the early stages of Connecticut's history changes our sense of the state, but there is still so much more to discover. These days, it's a privilege for me to meet with African-American folks ready to learn more about their family stories, particularly because so many grew up here unenthusiastic about history because of the limited representation of Black achievement in their textbooks. Some are able to find ancestors they didn't know they had who contributed to this state's growth and prosperity. We can't solve every problem in this state, but we can give people back their history, and we should. And many places are already doing this work. The Fairfield Museum just launched an updated town history gallery, and in one of the stories, it follows a family from enslavement through freedom and into the new centuries. So the story of Black achievement in Fairfield doesn't end with enslavement. Last week, Yale researchers released a major report on the university's connections to enslavement. Digging deep into archival documents, they found receipts that showed that amongst the workers who built Connecticut Hall in the 1750s, there were free and enslaved Black men, not enslaved by Yale, I need to note, but Black men helped to build one of the oldest buildings in Connecticut. There are plenty of other discoveries like this out there, but we need funding to find and tell these stories. Collectively, they tell us so much about Connecticut history, the milestones we should celebrate, and the places where we stumbled and need to do better. We have the history, we just need to share it. And resources like the Cultural Fund and the Roadmap help us to do that.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you for your articulate testimony tonight. And we would like to now invite Cynthia Ryder, Hartford Stage. And good evening to you, madam.
Thank you, Senator Hartley and members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm so happy to be able to be here on a Friday night where we are at Hartford Stage in rehearsal for the Hot Wing King, eating lots of Hot wings. I wish I'd brought some for everyone here this evening.
Wish you did.
I'm very happy to be able to testify on behalf of all the Connecticut producing theaters for an increase in our line item, as well as more meaningful support for arts and culture across our state with the roadmap. I am Cynthia Ryder. I live and work here in downtown Hartford, and I'm the managing director at Hartford Stage. And I'm here on behalf of my colleagues who I share a line item with. That's Goodspeed Musicals, Long Wharf Theater, Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, the Westport Country Playhouse, and Yale Repertory Theater. As you've heard from many other people, the return on investment makes arts and culture a real bargain. We are active almost every day of the year, bringing people downtown or into different neighborhoods. As an example, Hartford Stage, 8 times a week, brings close to 500 people down into our downtown neighborhood. But there's also a lot of quiet work that arts and culture organizations do that don't get the publicity of our terrific performances, and that's the work that the flagship theaters do with young people. Thousands of children come downtown, using Hartford Stage as an example, to come downtown and see theater sometimes for the first time. For example, 5,000 children saw A Christmas Carol this past December at significantly reduced ticket prices. And of those, 35% were from Title I schools that saw an even bigger significant discount. All Hartford Stage residents can check out with their library card 2 free tickets to any performance at Hartford Stage. Hundreds of kids participate in our summer programs, and you heard wonderfully from Shelley earlier about the epidemic of loneliness that Senator Murphy, the governor, and many of you have been speaking about. These arts programs are vital for the young people in our state and for the audiences that come to our theaters. We need the vitality, the beauty, and the feeling of connectedness that being in an audience or being a young person in an arts program can bring to us. And it is more of this work will be able to be done if our flagship producing theaters have an increase to their line item to at least match the amount that our wonderful colleagues at the performing arts centers are able to get. So on behalf of all my colleagues with the flagship producing theaters, thank you for considering our increased support for our line item and for the cultural roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. And yes, next time, bring those goodies. We'd like to now invite Angelica Durrell. Is Angelica with us? No. If she comes back, we will dial back. Dustin Nelson, are you with us, Dustin? Dustin? No. Okay. Brian Donahue. Brian Donahue from Not Just Us? No, okay. Carlos Sosa. Is Carlos with us from the city of New Haven? Okay. Carlos Sosa, are you with us, Carlos? Hello? Carlos.
Hello, good evening.
Carlos.
I'm so sorry about that.
Yeah, you've got the floor. Go right ahead.
Dear distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee, my name is Carlos Sosa, Director of the Department of Community Resilience for the City of New Haven. And I'm here to testify in support of investing in the Connecticut Homeless Response System. I oversee a department with the aim to address homelessness, community mental health, gun violence, and crisis response and trauma. My department houses an Office of Housing and Homeless Services, an Office of Community Mental Health Initiatives, and an Office of Violence Prevention. The City of New Haven is one of the few local governments with dedicated staff to support our unhoused populations. We partner with local agencies, providing funding, coordinating federal and local resources. We have gone to great lengths creating strategic initiatives to address homelessness. We purchased a hotel and converted into a homeless shelter that will have the capacity to host up to 100 people every night. We fund a continuum of services that includes homeless services, navigation hubs, one-stop pop-up showers, and more to ensure that people have access to safe shelter, meals, clothing, showers, laundry, case managers, primary care, and behavioral health. However, the city's general fund is not enough to make up for the historical underfunding of the homeless response system. I encourage this committee to consider the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness proposal to fund the homeless response system. In particular, I encourage preserving the $27.76 million in DEMA's housing supports and services line item and appropriating an additional $20 million to strengthen and stabilize the homeless response system. I extend my sincere gratitude to the committee for providing me with this opportunity to testify and for all the work you do. Thank you.
Carlos, thank you very much for being with us and thank you for the work that you do. Appreciate you being here. Next, Christine Thebarge from the St. Vincent de Paul of Bristol. Executive Director Christine.
Hi, good evening, Senator Alston, Representative Walker, Vice Chair Paris, Ranking Member Berthel, and distinguished members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is Christine Thebarge, and I am the Executive Director at St. Vincent de Paul Mission of Bristol, and I'm also a resident of Avon. And I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today in favor of HB number 5048, enacted adjusting the state budget for the biennium ending June 30th, 2025. I've worked in the nonprofit sector with people experiencing homelessness or in need since 2015. My husband and I started a nonprofit day center in 2016, and in June of 2020, I became the executive director of St. Vincent de Paul Mission of Bristol. St. Vincent de Paul Mission of Bristol is one of 3 emergency shelters serving 5 towns known as the Central Connecticut CAN, serving Berlin, Bristol, New Britain, Plainville, and Southington. Connecticut's experiencing a historic rise in the rate of homelessness since 2021. The number of people experiencing homelessness has gone up 14% over the last couple of years. And as of February 13th, there were close to 5,000 people experiencing some sort of homelessness in the state of Connecticut. And I know that our shelter's been full every single night, and it is it's so difficult to turn people away at the door and, provide them with alternatives to call and know that shelter after shelter is completely full as well. As of January 29th, there were over 940 people sleeping outdoors, and many of them were turned away due to lack of capacity at the warming centers. I know we have an overflow, cold weather overflow shelter that's open from December to March every year. And we did find a slightly larger facility this year. And even with that, we're turning away people and have a turn away list each night. So if somebody doesn't come back from the night before, we're able to call right away. Again, night after night, our beds have been full there as well. We also have a strong outreach specialist team, and that team is able to meet people where they are, and that is truly under bridges, up mountains. And there are some people in the area who won't come into shelter, and they're pretty recluse. And one of our wins the other day was having somebody come in to meet with our outreach person who normally hasn't come for services, and they've been outdoors for 5 years. But after developing a relationship outside, they're finally ready to come inside to be housed. They won't come into shelter yet. So we have a really good flow here, and that is outdoors to warming shelter to shelter to sustainably housed. And we also were able this year to open a resource center, which is a walk-in center with showers, laundry, computer lab, case management. And that helps with a lot of the health conditions, general well-being of our vulnerable clients, develop housing plans, work towards individual goals, gathering IDs, recovery programs, etc. We also partner with agencies to reduce redundancy. So we rely heavily on our backbone agency. And I know you heard from Matt Morgan from Journey Home, and they are our backbone agency. And they are great at coordinating information. So we are not reinventing the wheel. We're able to use best practices.
You can summarize, Christine. I so appreciate your testimony.
Sure. So at the end of the day, I'll say my staff many of my staff has lived experience. At this point, they are burned out because we are understaffed. We have lots of ads out, have not been able to hire at the rates that they are. They use services that we help connect people to. And we have a couple points here. We are looking for annualized $20 million, and that is $5 million for the cold weather emergency response, $7.5 million annually to strengthen our shelter and outreach, $3.6 million annually to sustain diversion and coordinated hubs, access network hubs, $2 million to support and expand the work of coordinated access network backbone agencies, and $2 million annually for the flexible funding subsidy pool. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Christine. Appreciate your testimony. We're going to have to move on though, and I'd like to now invite Tanya Barrett from 211. Senior VP. Is she with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey. Hi, Tanya.
Good evening, Senator Hartley, and to the committee. I want to thank you for the opportunity today to testify in support of investing in measures to ensure that our homeless prevention system, our homeless response system is able to meet the overwhelming demand for housing and homeless services statewide. As you know, that United Way of Connecticut 211 has since 2014 been the front door for our coordinated access networks for housing in Connecticut and homelessness. And it's also the 24/7 information and referral connection to resources and helping people get connected to those resources. When we do this work, our first line of defense is looking at connecting people to those community resources and to see if their natural supports are available to help them resolve their housing issue. Our team schedules people who are not able to resolve their issue with a CAN appointment at one of the local 7 coordinated access teams across the state. And those CANs explore shelter and housing options with folks who cannot resolve their issue just through the available community resources. We're proud of our role in ending homelessness, as others have spoken before us. We have seen some success over 9 years having homelessness reduce, but that trend has ended. And now in Connecticut, we've seen a 14% increase year over year in homelessness. And the most recent data and point in time counts continue to show that uptick. We see that in the calls that we're getting. In FY23, we received nearly 120,000 calls related to housing and homelessness, which is a 33% increase since 2017. And due to fewer resources, increased need, the 211 housing crisis line experienced a really drastic increase in hold times. With your support, last year we secured the funds to restore the 211 housing crisis line to 24/7 service, respond to life-threatening situations in times of declared extreme cold weather, and to reduce wait times. And I'm really happy to share that since that funding was fully implemented, our average wait times have been reduced by half. So we're really happy to be able to offer quicker service at all hours of the day to more residents, but we recognize that we need adequate investment across the homeless response system to meet the pressing needs of your constituents. Our current homeless service system is not resourced to respond to this level of need. And like others have said before me, there are close to 5,000 people experiencing some form of homelessness right now in Connecticut, and over 940 of those people are sleeping outdoors, with many of them having been turned away because of lack of capacity in the shelters and warming systems. The homeless response system.
We're kind of at the end of the time. Appreciate it.
Okay, so I'll just wrap up by just saying that we
we're
thank you for your support and ask that you also invest in the Connecticut Can End Homelessness request for additional investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tanya. Appreciate it. Next is Amani Shirley from Young Legends. Are you with us, Amani? Hello.
Hello.
And good evening. You have the floor.
Good evening, Senator Olston, Representative Walker, and Vice Chairs and other distinguished members. Thank you. Good evening, Senator Olston, Representative Walker, Vice Chairs, and other distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Amani Shirley, and I am a social worker and a leader with the Young Legends Leadership Academy, and I am a resident of Hartford's 7th District. I appreciate the opportunity to testify this evening in favor of the adjusting the budget, and I'm here to directly speak on the working cities challenge of Federal Reserve Bank of Boston choose Hartford, Connecticut to focus on workforce development. Hartford is a low-income neighborhood, and with low-income neighborhoods, we have high crime rates and serious mental health concerns. With these low incomes lead to people working multiple jobs and still not able to make ends meet to support themselves and their families. People need to be able to work jobs with livable wages, and the majority of these jobs require a higher level of skills, degrees, and experience. Over the past 6 weeks, I was able to participate in the Young Legends Leadership Program, teaching leadership skills, networking, and advocacy skills presented through our final capstone projects. I was also able to network with professionals and learn what it means to be a leader, diversity, inclusion, and equity, budgeting, and mock interviews. And everyone will also be matched with the career mentor. This program and similar programs are needed in our communities to help teach skills that are needed in the workforce that are not presented to us in our educational experiences, especially in our high school settings. So with this program, I was able to learn more skills, and I feel more prepared to be out in the workforce. And I just hope that we can continue these programs, and the money that was proposed, the $2 million that was allocated in the previous year, we respectfully ask that it will be continued to be allocated in the upcoming fiscal year. Thank you to the committee for the opportunity to testify. With your support, we can strengthen the workforce development of Hartford and help make sure the residents are prepared to be productive in job opportunities. Thank you again.
Thanks to you, Amani, for being with us tonight, for your leadership in your community. Helen Higgins, please, from Connecticut Humanities, Chair of the Board.
Yes,
Yes,
thank you, Senator Hartley. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes, thank
Sure.
you, Senator Hartley. My name is Helen Higgins, and I serve as Chairman of Connecticut Humanities. And I speak today in favor of adjusting Governor Lamont's proposed 2025 budget to include much more money and to support funding for arts, culture, and tourism sector, as you've been hearing. With our partners in arts and tourism, we envision and support a $50 million investment in these three sectors, what we refer to as the arts, culture, and tourism roadmap. I also ask that you support any legislation put forth this session in support of America 250 Connecticut, commemoration that will explore Connecticut's significant role in the founding of our democracy. Connecticut Humanities is the foremost distributor of state funds for culture. As such, it has become the leader and trailblazer for cultural life in our state. As chair of Connecticut Humanities, I am in particular testifying in favor of that part of the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Roadmap that proposes $2.5 million to Connecticut Humanities to be distributed in cultural grants across the state. This increase from the governor's budget, which is currently at $850,000 and has been since before 2019, this increase, along with a parity increase to arts funding, means that we at Connecticut Humanities can continue to infuse the cultural sector with funds and guidance that will strengthen a critical part of our state's economy. There is an immediate return of $3 for every dollar invested in funding in cultural organizations. Over 175 workers are employed in Connecticut cultural organizations. These organizations represent 14% of our economy. Since 2021, with a major infusion of funds from the Connecticut State Legislature, Connecticut Humanities has awarded over $61 million in state funding, almost 2,100 grants to the arts and culture sector. The impact of this funding has been astonishing, allowing more than 725 cultural organizations to keep doors open and people employed during the pandemic and beyond. In these last 3 years, we have uncovered hundreds of underserved cultural organizations in our 169 towns, all deserving of our continued support. And so I ask for your support for an increase in proposed funds to Connecticut Humanities that will ensure meaningful and equitable support to Connecticut's cultural sector. And I also ask for your support of funding for our 250th commemoration. A vibrant humanities and arts environment is critical to the well-being and quality of life of our communities. Thank you.
Ellen, thank you very much. Thank you for being with us tonight. We'd like to now invite Melissa Tisdale from the Mary and Isabel Friedman Center for History.
Good evening. My name is Maisa Tisdale, and I'm the president and CEO of the Mary and Eliza Freeman Center for History and Community. Once again, the governor's budget returns state funding for arts, culture, and tourism to 2019 levels. It must be increased, and funding for America 250 activities should also be included. Founded in 2009, the center owns the historic Mary and Eliza Freeman houses in Bridgeport South End, historic Little Liberia, one of the nation's oldest settlements of free people of color. The homes under restoration are on the National Register of Historic Places for significance to African Americans and women. Leveraging this restoration, we plan to create a national heritage site consisting of a museum, education, digital research center, and housing. Now, people tend to think of culture and arts as dessert, not really important. This couldn't be further from the truth, especially in Bridgeport. Our center is the outgrowth of a grassroots movement that saved the Freeman houses from demolition. Far from being engaged in elitist cultural activities, the Freeman Center builds civic pride through history. We illustrate future possibilities through arts and culture. We inspire positive action, resilience, and preservation-based equitable development. Above all, we teach, supplementing the resources provided in schools and colleges. Availability of grants before and during the pandemic helped stabilize us, built organizational capacity, and even allowed us to progress. Our office could keep its doors open and match the dollars that the state provided. Those dollars became a springboard that allowed us to win a $1 million grant from the Mellon Foundation and $750,000 from the National Park Service. In other words, state funding through a grassroots nonprofit with innovative ideas, a lifeline. And we used that lifeline to weave a network that did not exist before and brought in new resources for the people we serve. Finally, restoration on the Eliza Freeman House is about to begin, a $2.5 million project. Jobs in construction will be created, followed by permanent positions when this Climate Resilience Center opens its doors. But have no doubt, budget funds, our tax dollars returned to us, are an investment. The more invested, the more profound the outcomes. The less you give, the less trickles down to neighborhoods like Bridgeport South End. So thank you very much. And please use the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Funding Roadmap. The governor's budget, it takes us backwards. It doesn't take us forwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melissa, for being with us tonight. I'd like to invite Eric Glam from the Trinity College, Chair of the Music Department.
Good evening. I'm here. Dear Madam Chair and members of Appropriations, I'm writing in support of HB 5048, but I oppose the increase in the marketing budget by $1 million while leaving the entire arts sector at current funding levels. I'm Eric Galm, Professor of Music and Ethnomusicology, Chair of the Music Department, and Co-Director of the Center for Caribbean Studies at Trinity College. I'd like to thank you for recognizing the relationship between tourism and arts and culture, and I encourage you to think broadly about how the arts help to build more vibrant cities and towns, to attract and retain top-notch talent, and to build a productive and dynamic workforce. It's important to know that arts and education helps people develop critical thinking strategies so they can become independent, expressive, and comprehensive individuals. With continually rising expenses in our day-to-day lives, level funding is the equivalent of a cut. Moreover, I advocate for the reinstatement of the Connecticut Cultural Fund, which was eliminated in 2024. As a result, current arts funding practices designate arts funding through line item appropriations within the Tourism Fund. This approach is focused in the wrong direction and fails to adequately support breadth and diversity of arts organizations and artists throughout the state of Connecticut. The numbers tell the story. In a direct comparison between Connecticut Cultural Fund versus line item appropriations, arts funding could support 159 towns instead of the current 24, 141 state house districts instead of 36, 36 state senate districts instead of 19, 735 cultural organizations instead of 69, and 86 organizations that are comprised of or serve BIPOC communities instead of 8. While tourism and marketing are certainly mechanisms in which we promote the state of Connecticut, we need to have something for people to experience when they come to our state. Direct support of artists and a diverse array of arts organizations ensures that all of Connecticut is represented and benefits from the allocation of our commonwealth of resources. One single event can make a significant impact throughout the region. For example, in 2007, I created an event at Trinity College called the Samba Fest, an outdoor festival to highlight highlight our student music ensemble spring performance. As a result, this festival has now provided direct service to more than 70,000 individuals through festival attendance, public school engagement, community workshops, and more. In addition, live broadcasts on local public radio and internet streaming have helped to propel this into a global event. When I've traveled to Brazil, people have taken me to their modestly decorated living rooms, showing me the television set where their entire neighborhood gathered to accompany their community members who were performing in Hartford, Connecticut. Adequate funding for arts and culture goes far beyond the limited scope of line item appropriations and directly reaches the spirit and soul of celebratory identity that helps to construct a comprehensive portrait of Connecticut's profile. Your continued support of the arts, as well as the mechanisms in which you direct that funding, helps to ensure that the music and culture of the people of Connecticut will continue to be represented today and in the future. Thank you for recognizing this important backbone of our cultural and economic landscape.
Thanks very much, Eric. Thanks for being with us.
Mhm.
We would like to now invite Eric Harrison, United Way of Central and North Eastern Connecticut, to be with
Good
us.
evening. Thank you, members of the Appropriations Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this evening regarding the opportunity to continue supporting the Working Cities Initiative. And you heard from one of our young legends earlier, and she's a very tough act to follow. My name is Eric Harrison, President and CEO of United Way of Central and Northeastern Connecticut, and I provide testimony in support of continued funding for the Working Cities Initiative. Our United Way brings people, resources, and organizations together to address immediate needs and find long-term solutions to challenging problems. We do this by investing in programs and services, leveraging public and private funding, leading community change initiatives to succeed in school, get people jobs, and remain financially secure. People are healthy, they have the basic needs are met during these tough times. In 2018, 5 Connecticut cities were selected to participate in the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston's Working Cities Challenge. Hartford, East Hartford, Middletown, Danbury, and Waterbury. Each city team works to address a community challenge related to workforce and economic inclusion to address persistent poverty. All 5 cities share a collective commitment to workforce development, and that leads to living wage employment. In Hartford, our goal is to reduce the unemployment rates of marginalized young adults, particularly opportunity youth in targeted neighborhoods. The unemployment rate for young adults in our focus area is over 13%, more than 3 times higher than the state average of less than 4%. Lack of income from employment contributes to persistent poverty in our community, where 28% of households are working but not making ends meet, according to our most recent ALICE report. At the same time, we know that young adults are needed in the workforce, as more than 75,000 jobs are currently unfilled in the state of Connecticut. To address these complex factors, we want to partner with the state of Connecticut to be between the untapped talent of young adults, like you heard earlier this evening, in 5 main underlying issue areas: lack of awareness, service delivery system challenges, employer policies and practices, and that young adults are excluded from decision-making. We also have several strategies around this: establishing peer outreach and increasing youth leadership and decision-making, increasing collaboration, alignment of partners and resources, such as the Hartford Working Cities partners with multiple stakeholders, raising awareness and changing policies and practices among employers. The Hartford Working Cities partners with Workforce Solutions Collaborative of Metro Hartford and Capital Workforce Partners. Next year, we hope to expand this work with a continued support from the state of Connecticut. We appreciate the past support and previous support of $1 million per year for 2 years. That is an initial amount that is winding down, and we ask that you consider extending this support for the 5 participating cities in order to allow us to continue our initiatives and work together to secure jobs for all Connecticut residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And we would like to now invite Stephen Tagliatella, Saybrook Point Resort and Marina. And good evening to you. Stephen? Does not seem to be with us. Okay, moving on to Rafael Rosario from CCEH. Rafael.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Good evening, Senator Hartley and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Rafael Rosario. I am the Senior Communications and Development Manager at the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness. And I'm also a resident of the great city of Waterbury. And I've witnessed firsthand the stark realities of mass evictions and the gap between our community's needs and the resources available to address them. So today I stand before you to express my strong support for HB 5048. This bill represents a beacon of hope for countless individuals and families across Connecticut struggling in the face of escalating homelessness crisis. Since 2021, our state has experienced a 14% increase in homelessness, a statistic that underscores the urgency of our collective response. Waterbury is no stranger to these challenges. The impact of underfunding is evident in the stretched thin services and the overburdened staff striving to make the difference amidst the growing needs. In the eyes of those forced to sleep outdoors, in the frustration of families facing eviction, and in the desperation of individuals seeking stability. HB 5048 is more than just a legislative proposal, it's a lifeline. We can address the critical gaps in our current framework by appropriating $20 million to strengthen and stabilize the homeless response system. This includes $5 million annually to cold weather emergency response, $7.4 million annually to strengthen shelter and outreach providing for our frontline workers, $3.6 million annually to sustain diversion and coordinated access network hubs, $2 million annually to support and expand the work of coordinated access network backbone, organizations enhancing our system's efficiency and reach, and $2 million annually for the flexible funding subsidy pool is a testament to our commitment, not just temporary fixes, but sustainable solutions. The situation in Waterbury mirrors the broader challenges facing Connecticut. The stories on the margins of society are not just tales of personal failure, but symptoms of our collective failure to provide for the most vulnerable among us. HB 5048 offers us a chance to right these wrongs, to build a more compassionate, effective homeless response system that reflects the best of our values as a community and the state. Thank you for considering my testimony. With your support, HB 5048, we can ensure that every resident of Connecticut, regardless of their circumstance, has the access to dignity, safety, and stability of a place to call home. Thank you for your time. Have a great weekend.
Hey, Raphael, thank you for being here with us and for your testimony and your work. I'd like to now go back and invite Angelina Durrell, who I believe is now with us. And oh, not you.
Yes.
Okay, there she is.
Good
You have the
afternoon.
floor, Angelina.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Connecticut Humanities. My name is Angelica Durrell, and I am proud to represent the city of Stamford. I'm here
You know,
to advocate.
your volume is kind of low. Is there any way? We could,
Is this a little? I'm just gonna get closer to the microphone. Is this better?
a bit. I just want to make sure folks don't miss your testimony.
Okay. I'm here to support Connecticut Humanities to receive funding. Can you all hear me a little bit better now?
If you talk louder, thank you.
Okay, I will speak louder. I'm here to speak on behalf of Connecticut Humanities to receive funding through the Cultural Fund, and also to support America's 250th anniversary. I see that Representative Paris and Representative Rachel Canna from Stamford are here. And I also see Representative Bobby Gibson, who's an avid educator for cultural equity and educational equity. I'm the first and only Connecticut resident to serve on the National Task Force study by the Americans for the Arts on arts economic prosperity this year. And I'm pleased to see how the Stamford has become the second largest city in Connecticut. However, Stamford does not have a lot of cultural funds and a lot of access to cultural institutions. In Temple just opened the doors to our first ever Community Arts and Cultural Center last week. And we look forward to continuing to partner with organizations like Connecticut Humanities to be able to bring culture to our city and our constituents in Fairfield County. We've received funding from Connecticut Humanities since 2020 at the height of the global pandemic, and their support allow our organization to continue bringing our services to the most vulnerable children and families. Our educational humanities programming help the organization bring national visibility and be able to sustain and grow jobs in our organization into 5 full-time positions and 20 part-time positions. Now that we also prepare to celebrate America's anniversary, they need your support so that organizations like us can partner with them and do excellent programming that leads to civic engagement and therefore votes for all of our elected officials, and to educate and engage our constituents so that they can participate and learn about their local and national politics and participate in our democracy. I'm also here speaking on behalf of our Latino Americans living in Connecticut. And I really think that it's important to support the cultural fund and culturally specific institutions like Intempo that are led by leaders of color, of different cultural backgrounds, in telling the story of our immigrants' contribution in building our great country and also in participating in the social landscape of Connecticut. Thank you so much, and I look forward to receiving support to Connecticut Humanities.
Thank you very much, Angeline, for being with us. We'd like to now invite Lee. That is you. You have the floor, madam. You put
Thank
your
you.
mic on. Do you want to put the mic on there?
I think it's on.
Is it?
Yeah, I have a hoarse voice, so bear with me. Thank you, Senator Hartley and members of the Appropriations Committee for letting me speak tonight. My name is Lee McFadden. I'm the Vice Regent of the Connecticut Daughters of the American Revolution. I'm also the chair of the Bristol 250 Committee, which is planning for our nation's anniversary. So who is the Yukon Husky named after? And what Connecticut artist has 3 paintings in our Capitol's rotunda? Where is the longest town green in the United States? And why is Connecticut called the Provision State? The answers to these questions can be found in a rural town in eastern Connecticut where our first elected governor lived, Lebanon. I'm confident that the majority of Connecticut residents have never heard of Lebanon, never mind been there. As we approach the 250th birthday of our nation, we owe it to our residents to expose them to the rich history that is part of the Connecticut story. To do this, historic houses like the one I head up, the Governor Jonathan Trumbull House, museums, historical societies, all need help to get the word out that history is relevant in today's society. The Trumbull House has been fortunate to receive funds from a private foundation to restore the house and provide the matching funds for the Connecticut Humanities Grant that is planning the reinterpretation of the house. But once the house is ready, will they come? To quote a popular baseball movie. Organized consortiums like the Last Green Valley, advertising, conferences, outreach, and other forms require consistent funding to reach the greatest number of residents. The governor's proposed budget for this year for arts, culture, and tourism is at the level it was in 2019. We need to be gearing up for our country's semi-quincentennial celebrations, not taking backward steps. If we continue to fund at pre-pandemic levels, the state will lose the considerable investments it made in these sectors in the FY 2022-2023 budget. Cities and towns in the state have started planning what they want for their 250th celebrations. Bristol had their latest meeting last night. Teachers from the elementary and middle schools talked about how, with a little bit of funding, they could enrich their curriculum by bringing the children to historic places in the city to learn crafts and occupations from Bristol's past and learn what can be possible with a dream and some hard work.
Lee, thank you very much.
Thank you, members of the Appropriation
I think there's
Committee.
a representative in the House from Lebanon. Quickly.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you for being with us, Lee. Robert LaFrance.
Good evening. My name is Robert LaFrance, and I am the Director of Policy for the National Audubon Society's Connecticut office. I want to thank the chairs and ranking members of the committee, chairs Austin and Walker, as well as Berthel and Nuccio, for allowing me to testify tonight. It's good to see you up there, Senator Hartley. It's always nice to have worked with you, and I notice a colleague of mine up here as well, Representative DiCaprio, and I'm happy that you are in the government on this side working with us on these particular issues has to do with funding for conservation and development. I'm here to support the governor's proposal to add $5.75 million in ARPA funds to start to help to work on some of the climate resilience issues that we have in the state of Connecticut. This money would be used to help develop a statewide resilient plan and project design, as well as a statewide climate change vulnerability assessment, support some flood hydraulic modeling, and extreme heat preparedness and capacity for building that effort. And then also talking about integration, local culverts, which we don't often think about when we think about flooding, into a statewide GIS resource. These things are critically important to be able to get our governments, state, regional, and local, to align their planning when it comes to coastal resilience. We see flooding at the coast, we see flooding in rivers. We have to figure out how we're going to prepare for that. And these funds are great investments that the governor's putting forward to start to work on that. A lot of details provided in Senate Bill 11, which I'm sure you'll hear more about, but I think it's a very significant and important element. I want to shift now to what I really came here to speak to tonight, and that's the environmental conservation branch of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. Right now, it's particularly woefully underfunded. Senator Hartley, I heard you speak earlier today about some of the conflicts that we're having on places like trails. Part of the reason for that, in my humble opinion, is the lack of an adequate level of funding of ENCON police officers. You heard the commissioner today talk about enforcement. She talked a lot about what they're trying to do on permits and enforcement, but that tends to be more on the civil side. And I think they are doing a good job and will continue to do a good job in that area. But in the field work where officers are actually doing that type of work, they require and need more people. They've doubled the number of people, which is great. 2 times the number of people are now visiting our parks, but we've not doubled the size of our ENCON police. So as a result of that, other enforcement, things like hunting, trapping, things like making certain that piping plovers are taken care of along the beaches are being underfunded. And I also think that's true for conflicts like you were talking about, Senator Hartley, where you have motorbikes interacting with hikers and with other folks that are there. The other places, though, that I think that the department needs assistance is also in urban wildlife. We had an urban wildlife program at the department a number of years ago that got zeroed out. Bringing some folks in from an urban wildlife perspective will help educate people about things like bears and coyotes, help understand people in the urban space get a better understanding for wildlife, a better appreciation for it. And I want to thank that. And the other last piece I want to plug for quickly, I know, is a marine biologist in the marine section. We need another PhD level biologist in that section. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Bet,
Thanks, Robert. I'd like to invite now Catherine Whitney, Coalition to End Homelessness. Are you with us, Catherine?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, and welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Senator Hartley and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Catherine Whitney, and I'm a program manager at the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness and a resident of Willimantic. I appreciate the opportunity to testify to you today in favor of HB 5048. As you've heard, Connecticut is experiencing a historic rise in the rate of homelessness. Since 2021, the number of people experiencing homelessness has gone up by 14% year over year. And as of February 13th, there were close to 5,000 people experiencing some form of homelessness in Connecticut. As of January 29th, there were over 940 people sleeping outdoors, with many turned away due to lack of capacity. Connecticut's homeless response system, nonprofit organizations, and staff are at the front line of this humanitarian crisis. But although our system consistently ranks among the highest in the nation, we are unable to meet the need that we are seeing increasing every day. Our providers have not been given the reliable annualized funding we need to pay staff and cover the costs of operations, which hurts the services that all 169 of our municipalities rely on. I've had the privilege of seeing our homeless service provider locations and staff in action throughout the year for 2 years now. And I can attest to all the hard work they do and how this system truly acts as an emergency safety net for the state. In addition to preserving the existing funding. We are asking for an additional annualized $20 million in the DOH line item, including $5 million for cold weather, $7.4 million to strengthen shelter and outreach and pay staff, $3.6 million annually to sustain diversion and coordinated access network hubs, $2 million annually to support and expand the work of coordinated access network backbone organizations, and $2 million annually for the flexible funding subsidy pool. Thank you to the committee for this opportunity to testify. With your support, we can strengthen and stabilize our state's homeless response system and help make sure Connecticut's residents are healthy and stably housed. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I'd like to now invite Amanda Feliciano, Young Legends, and she's with us. Hello, Amanda.
Good evening, Senator Hartley and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee, and thank you for the opportunity to testify this evening. My name is Amanda Feliciano, and I am the Director of Youth Impact for the Greater Hartford YMCA and a current Young Legend. Today, I am here urging the Appropriations Committee to abstain from making adjustments to the budget and consider the grave impact the total reduction or reallocation of funding for the Working Cities Challenge and its affiliated development agencies will have on youth and young adults in our communities. I recently attended a panel discussion at our downtown Hartford Public Library where I was presented with the startling evidence that tells the unspoken story of the crisis youth and young adults are facing in Connecticut today. A recent study commissioned by Dalio Education found that 1 in 5 of Connecticut's young people are either at risk or disconnected. That means there are 119,000 young people who have either dropped out of school, are in danger of dropping out, and who are, for those aged 18 to 26, unemployed and in many cases unemployable. Young Legends plays an integral role in identifying the disconnected young adults of CT, inviting our young people into spaces where they can learn alongside their peers and with the guidance and support of working professionals of varying industries and backgrounds, continue to grow and excel. The Young Legends outreach and recruitment efforts have found that young adults are seeking spaces where education, leadership, personal growth, and opportunities are accessible, affordable, and ultimately made readily available despite the many barriers present in their day-to-day lives. Following the pandemic, we have rebuilt the Young Legend program. With the funding available through Hartford Working Cities and affiliate agencies this past year, Young Legends with United Way curated the Young Legends Leadership Academy. Through the Young Legends Leadership Academy, we were able to engage a cohort of young adults and to provide them with learning experiences, coaching and training, and to further support and foster their overall development, providing each of the Young Legend members with a refined set of skills for workforce preparedness. Though we could only accept 23 participants, there were 80+ young people from Hartford alone eagerly anticipating acceptance into the Young Legend Leadership Academy. If funding is cut for the Working Cities Challenge and ultimately Young Legends, the remaining 57 young people of Hartford and countless others around Connecticut will not be afforded the same opportunities. If this remains true, young people will continue to experience the harsh reality where substance abuse, crime, incarceration, homelessness, an incomparably high unemployment rate, and other significant challenges are ever present each day, each year. The Young Legend Leadership Academy currently has incredible momentum to continue fostering the development of future young legends who would benefit from access and participation in programs of this kind. Connecticut is home to thousands already doing so much good for these young people and their families. But to address this crisis with intentionality, we need the continued funding and the economic support of those committed to ending this stark reality for the many young adults impacted in Connecticut. Connecticut's young adults are full of potential and aspire to be leaders in their personal and professional lives. To continue funding the efforts and initiatives established in Connecticut to connect our young people to community leaders and mentors, as well as development and career opportunities, is financially advantageous for our state in the long term and is the morally right thing to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time and consideration, and have a good evening.
You too. Best. John Johnson, please, from the Connecticut Tourism Coalition. Are you with us, John? Yes. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Senator Hartley and members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm John Johnson. I'm a board member of the Connecticut Tourism Coalition, and own a fine art gallery in New London, Connecticut. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to talk with you tonight about adjusting the budget for the ACT sector through the Tourism Fund. I'm here to support an increase of funding for FY25, originally proposed at 13.4 to 55.3. I think we would all agree that spending on tourism should be considered an investment rather than an expense to the state of Connecticut. The ripple effect has been talked about ad nauseum tonight, and we all recognize that it's a minimum of 3. And I think sometimes when people are on vacation, tourism will jump 4 to 6 times. But I'd like to elaborate on one of the line items, statewide marketing. We've heard testimony that we as a state have fallen badly behind when comparing our marketing efforts with those in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York State, and even Maine and New Jersey. Each of those states have increased annually their marketing budgets because results are measurable and quantifiable. Once again, we must recognize this expenditure of $20.5 million as an investment and not an expense. Of course, increasing our marketing budget naturally brings more activity and more jobs to the industry and to our state. For the size of the state we would all agree that Connecticut has some of the greatest tourist attractions on the East Coast. It's not necessary to elaborate those attractions. We all know what they are. But if we don't tell our story to visitors about them, they will continue to use I-95 and I-84 as a free roadway to access our neighbors without a stop in our state. We've got to change that mentality that Connecticut is a drive-through state, and we need to have funding enough to tell our story. $4.5 million does not come close to what is needed. In fact, I believe that the 4.5 might be enough for 1/4 of the year. I think we all recognize the value of the tourism industry. With your help, we'd like to expand our industry to reach its full potential. We appreciate all the support that the governor and the legislature have historically provided us, but we need more, and that's my message to your committee today. Thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you very much, John, for being here with us tonight. I'd like to now invite Margaret Middleton from Columbus House, the CEO of Columbus
Ms.
House.
Middleton, Madam Chair, has not accepted the promotion to panelist.
Okay, thank you for that, Madam Administrator. Moving on to our next speaker, that is Ed Hawthorne from the AFL, in person, no less. You have the floor, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Hartley, Representative Paris, and other distinguished members of this committee. My name is Ed Hawthorne. I'm proud to represent 250,000 working and retired people here in the state of Connecticut as the president of the Connecticut AFL-CIO. I'm here to testify regarding HB 5048, the governor's midterm budget adjustments. It adds $282,500 to maintain 2 staffing positions within the Department of Labor's Apprenticeship and Training Program. Currently, the program has 6,600 registered apprentices across 1,700 employers and 55 occupations across the state, including those high-demand jobs such as healthcare, teaching, manufacturing, and patient care. We are concerned this won't be sufficient to fully address the apprenticeship need that we have here in the state, and we'd ask that more be done there. The governor's proposed budget also includes $1.1 million for 20 positions across the unemployment insurance units. This includes the consumer contact center, call center, which currently, as you probably all have heard from constituents, has lengthy wait times already, as well as the benefit payment control and integrity units, which handle fraud and prevention services for DOL, the appeals division, other units that were funded by one-time resources. We also encourage this committee to do what the governor's budget does not do. And that's adding funding to DOL's Wage and Workplace Standards Division. The Wage and Workplace Standards Division handles wage complaints when somebody's paid less than the minimum wage, prevailing wage, standard wage, not paying overtime, failing to give meal breaks, requiring off-the-clock work, or taking workers' tips and actually stealing from them. Currently, it has a staff of 30. 24 of those are funded through the general fund, 6 are funded through civil penalties. There are 1,400 wage complaints that have been assigned to these very few investigators, and another 1,000 complaints are waiting to be assigned. These are people waiting for their money to be returned to them from employers that have exploited them. There is no reason, no legitimate reason that I can see that this unit should be understaffed. We should have an army of them. In addition to being revenue positive, wage and hour investigators ensure that employers follow the law and that employees are paid properly. If we have laws without proper enforcement, really what good are those laws? So a well-staffed DOL demonstrates the state's commitment to protecting workers' rights and deters workers from being exploited. The governor's Lamont's budget starts to fulfill that promise, and I ask the committee to continue to fulfill that promise and go the step further and add those wage and hour investigators. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Well, thank you very much, Ed, for being with us tonight. And we will now move on to our next speaker, and that is Sharon Redfern from the Cornerstone, the Executive Director. Are you with us, Sharon? Okay, I'm sure she'll be here momentarily.
Here I am.
There you are. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Floor is yours. Yes, madam. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I apologize if you hear music in the background. I'm at my granddaughter's dance recital. Good evening, Senator Austin and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Sharon Redfern, and I am the Executive Director of Cornerstone in Vernon, Connecticut, and a resident of Ellington. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today in favor of HB number 5048, an act adjusting the state budget for biennium funding ending June 30th, 2025. Cornerstone offers basic safety net services primarily to residents of Tolland and Hartford counties, including 3 shelters, 2 for families and 1 for single adults, a community kitchen, food cupboard, clothing and diaper banks, and 2 food outreach programs, 1 for school-aged children and 1 for seniors and disabled residents of Vernon. As a smaller town in Connecticut, Vernon is not eligible for Emergency Solutions Grant or CDBG funds, so getting reliable annualized funding, such as would be included in this $20 million appropriation to enhance the homeless response system, would be extremely impactful to programs like ours. The need for shelter placements keeps going up with close to 1,000 people sleeping outdoors. It is increasingly difficult to hire and retain staff who are in the front line working with people who have mental health or addiction issues, sometimes both, and who are experiencing one of the lower points in theirs and their families' lives. Our staff at Cornerstone is paid minimum wage with no benefits, and they stay because of their empathy and dedication to helping people. Many of them have been homeless themselves, and a lot of them also take advantages of our other programs. Cornerstone is currently sheltering 45 people per night for winter warming in beds and sometimes in chairs. Our shelter operation cost us $490,223, and we are small compared to some of the larger city programs. We are all struggling to pay our staff, to cover the cost of our operations, and do the necessary continuous fundraising while we compete for smaller and smaller pots of grant, foundation, donor, and government funds. In addition to preserving housing and homeless services in the Department of Housing line item, we are requesting an annualized $20 million from the legislature for cold weather emergency response, to strengthen shelter and outreach services, to sustain diversion and the coordinated access networks, and to have flexible funding subsidy pool. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. With your support, we can strengthen and stabilize our state's homeless response system and help programs like ours make sure Connecticut's most vulnerable residents are healthy and stably housed during a time of extreme crisis and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Much appreciate your testimony. Melanie Alvarez, is Melanie with us?
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you have the floor, Melanie.
Good evening, Madam Chair and other distinguished members. My name is Melanie Alvarez. I'm the Director of Programs at the Friendship Service Center, representing Central Connecticut, and I am a proud resident of New Britain. I'm here today to ask you to support House Bill number 5048, which includes annualized $20 million in funding to rescue the homeless response system. The Friendship Service Center is a homeless service organization, and we address issues from housing crisis through stable housing. Last year, we served over 1,200 households with our array of housing services, many funded by the Department of Housing, which is supported in this funding. You've already heard from my colleagues about the rise in homelessness, and when the number of people outside is estimated at almost 1,000 in the dead of winter, we need to act and we need to do better. We run a 37-bed emergency shelter that houses individuals and families. Our overflow shelter for cold weather houses 44 individuals and families. We are full, and we turn away individuals seeking shelter every day and redirect them to the 211 system, which typically has long wait times to speak to someone. I've sat with many clients for over an hour waiting for a representative. We've developed these diversion hubs throughout the state, which need continued funding assistance to give people community-based options when phone calls with long wait times are a barrier. People experiencing unsheltered homelessness do not always have phones or a place to charge them, resulting in the inability to reach someone for help. We are challenged with staffing crises when most of our staff are part of the ALICE population and forced with the decision to do this work or pay their rent because we are not able to pay them a fair housing wage. Professionals with specialized training should be paid and compensated accordingly. We are so very grateful for your past support of our mission. And this year, we are asking for $20 million investment to rescue this system, to strengthen and support cold weather operations, diversion hubs to keep people out of shelters, strengthen outreach efforts, emergency shelters, and a small amount of flexible funding to be able to rapidly respond to housing crises. We have a projected surplus in this state, which means not supporting this investment is a policy decision. We have seen already that lack of resources results in dangerous consequences like rises in housing instability and homelessness, the misuse of emergency departments, over-policing, and loss of human lives. We need to examine self-imposed guardrails that risk the loss of human life. We know how to solve this crisis, and we have an obligation to do so humanely. We in Connecticut pride ourselves on being on the cutting edge of our housing service provision. We are recognized as having functional zero in veterans homelessness. We need help to end this investment to continue our important work. And we need our legislators to help make policy decisions that enable us to keep people in their homes. How do we address this? How do we keep people off the streets? Well, for starters, it would be great if our legislators listen to the experts in the field and appropriately fund community-based housing and safety net services so we can mitigate this crisis. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for being with us. I'd like to invite Sarah Bromley, please, preschool teacher.
Good evening, Senator Hartley and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. I apologize, I'm in my car, but I really appreciate this opportunity to testify tonight. I'm here to speak in support of HB 5048, as I believe it's simply a moral document that it's imperative for us to support. And I know you're hearing so much valuable information from experts in the homelessness response system. I'm no expert. I just care deeply about my neighbors in all of our 169 towns. And, you know, I live in Milford. I've been an early childhood educator for over 40 years, and I'm astounded at how this housing crisis is expanding by leaps and bounds, and how I was not aware as recently as 3 years ago how much it impacts so many people I know. I have been fortunate never needed to use this response system. I did come close when my spouse was unemployed for 3 years, but thanks to, with the help of the CHFA program, we were able to keep our house. And without that, we really would have been forced to move in with family in another state. Even so, would have been fortunate to have had that airbag of family support. My friend David Morgan of Team Inc. calls having that family to fall back on is an airbag. And, it's an airbag that so many of our neighbors simply don't have. Right now, it happens to be our turn to be an airbag for my daughter, who has a really good job. But if she can't afford to live even making like $28 an hour. Sorry for divulging that. But she couldn't afford to do that. So she's living in her childhood bedroom and feels lucky to have that childhood bedroom. So I'm here tonight because really for a lot of my friends I didn't have a few years ago, friends I have now because of the community organizing work I've been doing with Team Inc. and Naugatuck Valley Project in Waterbury, because of our work with Bethel Shelter in Milford, for example. I now have friends who put faces to our crisis for me, like Levon, my friend Levon and Sharon, like Sharon's younger son and Levon's younger brother, Mandel, doesn't always get a space in the no freeze program. And that's just terrible. Even people who do get space in our no freeze program in Milford, often, as we've heard before, are squished in like sardines. There's no privacy. There are people who have to sit at tables, sleeping with their heads on their arms at tables.
Sarah, thank you very, very much for.
Thank you. I'm sorry my timing went over, but thank you very much. We need more airbags. Please support this bill.
Appreciate it. Next, I'd like to invite Chelsea Ross, Partnership for Strong. Not sure I have the rest of that title, but.
Strong Communities.
Got it. Okay, it wasn't on here. Yeah, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Hartley and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight. I am Chelsea Ross, Executive Director at Partnership for Strong Communities, and I come before you tonight to respectfully and urgently request at least a $16 million increase in the Housing and Homeless Services line item within the Department of Housing's fiscal year 25 budget, specifically allocated for the Rental Assistance Program, or RAP. Each of you hears about the impact of the lack of affordable housing on families and communities in our state on a daily basis. You know that rents have increased by 20% since 2021. You've heard tonight that we've seen a 14% increase in homelessness in the last 3 years, and many people living in places not meant for human habitation, and that evictions continue to exceed pre-pandemic rates. Eviction and homelessness are strongly tied to the relative burden of families' housing costs. So over 70% of extremely low income households in our state are either experiencing homelessness, they're unable to find housing, or they're forced to pay well above an affordable rental rate. And as a result, they're teetering on the brink of housing loss. So we're moving in the wrong direction. We need more homes in Connecticut, all different types, at all different income levels, in all different communities. But we also know that developing new housing takes a while, it's expensive, and it's not always welcome in every community. But families are suffering, and we need to prioritize the expansion of cost-effective rental assistance to meet the immediate needs of our most vulnerable residents. RAP provides critical support to low-income households, subsidizing a portion of their rent to make their home more affordable to them. It's administered by DOH. RAP vouchers offer flexibility, allowing families to choose housing that meets quality standards in communities across our state. The effectiveness of RAP extends far beyond housing affordability. We've submitted written testimony which summarizes how vouchers improve health and educational outcomes while reducing homelessness, poverty, and racial disparities. RAP is expected to run a deficit this fiscal year due to the increases in rent and therefore increases in the amount of subsidy the program must pay landlords. A $16 million appropriation would include the $18 million required to simply keep pace with escalating rental costs and maintain the number of families served by RAP. This includes highly vulnerable populations at risk of homelessness like veterans, families with involvement in child welfare systems, families with high Medicaid utilization, people with disabilities, people leaving nursing homes. The additional $8 million would provide a stable home to roughly 650 more low-income families next year. A flat budget allocation will result in fewer households served over time when thousands of residents need immediate housing subsidy to end or prevent the experience of homelessness. So we're asking you to help stabilize these families by increasing funding for RAP as a key intervention to address our state's affordable housing crisis. Thank you for your attention and consideration.
Thank you very much, Chelsea. Right on the chime. Okay, like to invite Bruce Flax. Bruce?
I'm here.
Oh, hey, Bruce.
Good evening, and thank you, members of the Appropriations Committee, and thank you for all you do for the state. I'm Bruce Flax, president of the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce, speaking in support of increasing the aquarium's budget line item from $322,000 to $800,000. Mystic Aquarium is not only the most visited cultural attraction in Connecticut, but also one of the top 5 aquariums in the country, drawing more than 800,000 visitors annually. These visitors, half of whom are Connecticut residents, contribute significantly to our local economy by staying in hotels, dining at restaurants, and shopping in local stores. Mystic Aquarium serves as a gateway for tourism in the entire region and beyond. They are renowned locally throughout the country and the world. The aquarium's commitment to providing world-class animal care, engaging in vital conservation research, and offering educational programs makes it an invaluable asset to our state and our greater ocean planet. The economic impact of Mystic Aquarium is substantial, with more than $15 million spent annually on goods and services, employing over 270 people, and enlisting the support of over 500 community volunteers and 20 interns. Furthermore, Mystic Aquarium's initiatives, such as the Connecticut Summer at the Museum and EBT programs, have provided free admission to over 70,000 EBT cardholders and nearly 100,000 Connecticut Summer at the Museum visitors in 2023, ensuring access to high-need communities and underserved guests. In 2023, the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce celebrated Mystic Aquarium's 50th anniversary with a year-long celebration. The community showed strong support for Mystic Aquarium throughout the year. With their presence in our visitor center, we heard story after story of the significance of the aquarium, and it was generational. Grandparents, parents, and children were able to connect and talk about the past and create new memories for the next generation. Mystic Aquarium significantly increases multiple visits to the region. Considering all of this, I strongly support Mystic Aquarium's request to increase its budget line item from $322,000 to $800,000. This additional funding will enable the aquarium to continue its vital work in conservation research, animal rescue efforts, and educational programs that benefit children and families across the state. Please consider the request and support Mystic Aquarium's mission to inspire people to care for and protect our ocean planet. Your backing will ensure the continued success of this vital institution and contribute to our community's economic vitality and educational enrichment. Just thank you for your time. And also just want to say that the whole Zoom thing and the number of people you have is, whoever is monitoring it and doing it is doing a great job. So thanks very much. Have a good night.
Thanks, thanks, Bruce. Yes, and much appreciated. Hats off to, our team here. Thank you, and I'd like to now invite Jennifer Paradis from the Bethel Center.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Good evening, distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Jennifer Paradis, and I'm the Executive Director of the Bethel Center in Milford, Connecticut, and a resident of Hamden, Connecticut. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today regarding HB number 5048 concerning the state budget. I'm here to specifically request that you increase funding for all community nonprofits by 5% after providing $50 million to the health and human service providers that did not receive the DDS specific bonus funds for 24. This would be a total increase of $186 million as needed to face the increased expenses, but overall disinvestment in our nonprofit social service infrastructure since 2007. In addition, I'm respectfully requesting the preservation of the Housing and Homeless Service, HHS Municipal, and HHS Youth Department of Housing line items. And as you know, we're requesting $20 million annualized from the legislature to specifically focus on cold weather shelter outreach diversion, our coordinated access hubs, our coordinated access networks as backbone organization, and flexible funding for our subsidy pool. Lastly, because homelessness is a housing problem, I'm respectfully requesting that in our budget reflects an increase in funding for the rental assistance program RAP with $16 million for the coming fiscal year. The chronic underfunding of our homeless response system is devastating. In 2021, the number of people experiencing homelessness since 2021, we've seen an increase by 14%, and this was 29% annually in Greater New Haven since 2021. Today, Bethel Center is operating a 34-bed emergency shelter, although we are only funded for 18 beds. We have a winter shelter program that Sarah Bromley just spoke about that is funded for 15 people, and we're serving over 20 a night. We've made 48,000 meals last year with the funding that we, for only funding with 30,000 meals. And we've absorbed 75% increase in demand for diversion services, many of those increase coming from people who have been homeless for the first time. While we are moving through this crisis, our expenses have increased significantly, including healthcare, insurance, utilities. This year, we face service reductions that will result in lives damaged and lost without funding that we need to operate our crisis response programs. Homelessness is a result of systematic shortcomings and individual vulnerabilities. Shortcomings include the structural conditions of the housing and labor market, systemic discrimination in the system of education, healthcare, employment, housing, environmental conditions driven by climate change. The underfunding of the homeless response system is a systematic failure that you have the ability to address. Additionally, households with individual vulnerabilities are more at risk of homelessness. And this is something that our system, the homeless response system, is built to identify and respond to through case management. Individuals and families are more likely to experience homelessness if they've also experienced poverty, mental illness, addiction, domestic violence, are of a marginalized identity, or have limited community support, low self-esteem, and lack of belonging in their current community structures. Our case management staff are built.
Thank you, Jennifer. If you could wrap up.
Yes, I will. Noting that our staff are responding to these cases and working as hard as they can, making $15.96 an hour. This is an investment in our communities and can save up to $10,000 per individual that we're serving in the homeless response system, taking these resources, not ensuring that they're not going to fire, police, EMS, much more expensive services. So thank you for the opportunity to testify. I appreciate all the time here tonight.
Much appreciated. I'd like to invite Vincent Santilli, please, from the Home for the Brave. Vincent.
Good evening, Senator Hartley and members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm Vince Santilli. As was mentioned, I'm CEO of Homes for the Brave. I reside in Trumbull, and Homes for the Brave is based in Bridgeport, Connecticut. We now have 6 facilities in Fairfield and New Haven counties. 4 of those are in Bridgeport, 2 of those are in West Haven, Connecticut. We exist to meet the housing, mental health, vocational, and basic needs of men and women experiencing homelessness. Almost all of those are U.S. military veterans. 2 of our facilities include walk-in, drop-in veteran service centers. We have offerings such as computer classes, job prep workshops, life skills seminars, an emergency food pantry, and even the services of a therapist. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on, of course, House Bill number 5048, the governor's budget, and echoing the comments of previous folks who have testified, looking for an increase in funding for our community nonprofits by 5%, and some of the other things that were mentioned. A total increase is $186 million. Of course, our homelessness response system needs work, and that's been indicated by numerous of the folks that have testified before me with much greater detail. In our case, since 2022, Homes for the Brave has thrived and grown. We've expanded, as was mentioned, from 3 to 6 facilities. And our annex in downtown Bridgeport serves both veterans and their family members. We are now serving more than double the number of veterans that we did even 2 years ago, as recently as 2 years ago. And these are veterans that are either facing or the threat or homelessness itself. Last year, I testified before you on February 27th to 23. We requested $200,000 We were verbally notified on June 9th that we'd get 100,000 less 5%. We then received a written notification of that on August 1, and then 8 days later, we're told, and I quote, at the request of Connecticut DOL Commissioner Bartolomeo, these were being withheld until further notice, and the preparation of the contract will not occur. That brings our projected operating deficit this year over $200,000. This is disheartening, and we have not accepted that and are still awaiting that to be resolved. We don't feel this is an acceptable way to treat men and women who have served all of us. As we look ahead to our projected fiscal year 25 budget, we are expecting it to approach $4 million. We continue to battle inflationary pressures, and recruiting and retaining a larger staff is certainly challenging, as are increased utility and fuel costs. At the same time, all of our residential facilities are heavily occupied, and the average stays had markedly increased as our veterans struggle mightily to find clean, safe, and affordable permanent housing solutions. Yet we continue to deliver world-class service to these veterans. We are respectfully asking the Appropriations Committee to consider including Homes to the Brave in your fiscal year 25 Department of Housing budget, specifically at a level of 300,000. And I appreciate the opportunity to come before you this evening.
Thank you very much, Vincent. I appreciate your testimony. I'd like to now invite Sarah Fox with the Connecticut. Oh, hey, Sarah, you've got the floor. Snuck up on me there.
I sure did. Good evening, Senator Hartley and esteemed chairs and esteemed members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Sarah Fox, and I am the CEO of the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness. I'm a person with lived experience of homelessness, and my mom lives in permanent supportive housing, something I'm grateful for every single day. CCH represents a statewide initiative dedicated to solving homelessness in Connecticut. You've heard from providers across the state about the need for $20 million increase to the homeless and housing line item. And that increase is really critical. But I'm going to speak to you today about the December announcement that the administration made regarding $45 million to support emergency shelter and services. We truly appreciated those investments. They were critical. However, only $16.8 million of that allocation constituted new resources. And 43% of these funds were just one-time and limited funds with the expiration date of September 2025. This impending expiration poses a threat to the stability of our workforce and this ongoing churning that exists within our workforce as we sort of have these ARPA funds or CARES Act ESG funds that are time limited and have constraints. They cause our workforce to churn in a way where it's really hard to hire and retain really qualified staff. To address the ongoing humanitarian crisis, we're also asking for $5 million in ongoing, consistent, reliable funding for our cold weather winter shelters. As you've heard, there are more than 940 individuals who are outside and unable to come into shelter over the period of 2 weeks from January 29th. And this includes over 27 children in Fairfield County and 58 youth, and more people than should ever be outside. I mean, in a state like Connecticut, the fact that there are 27 children in Fairfield County sleeping in tents, in cars, we are hearing stories of families dropping their children off at daycare, who are returning to their cars after a full days of work, and that's where they're sleeping with their kids at night. And we appreciate the funding that has been made by the Department of Housing, such as the $2.8 million cost of living adjustment for service providers, $6.3 million for CAN hubs, and $2 million in flexible funding, and $5 million for Unite CT security deposits. These funds have been pivotal in sustaining critical services and supporting our frontline workers, but nevertheless, we're reliant on one-time funding. We must acknowledge that this funding cycle, once the funding ends, it has a critical impact on our work to solve homelessness. We need ongoing annualized committed funding so that we can do the work that we know how to do to solve homelessness across the state. Lives depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah, for being with us and for your testimony. Yeah, I'm understanding Margaret Middleton is now with us. Margaret?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to members of the committee for coming back to me. I'm here tonight to testify in support of HB number 5048, an act adjusting the state budget. My name is Margaret Middleton. I'm the CEO of Columbus House and a resident of Hamden. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today about this important bill that will impact thousands of people experiencing homelessness and extreme vulnerability in our communities. Columbus House serves just under 3,000 households a year experiencing homelessness across 4 counties. And we've been proud to support people in housing crisis for over 4 years. We provide a wide range of interventions specific to addressing a housing crisis for people, including outreach, emergency shelter, winter emergency shelter, housing case management, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and deeply affordable housing development. We do all the things. Homelessness is on the rise in our state at the very moment our state is least able to rise to the challenge. Our experience at Columbus House goes a long way to seeing why that's the case. My office at Columbus House is in a building that provides emergency shelter to 101 people a night, and we're on a light industrial stretch of El Grasso Boulevard. And in the evening when I leave work, I stop by the dining room. I like to say hi to our clients, and I like to check in with our staff, and I like to thank the volunteers who are there if there are any serving dinner. I'm also a member of our Consumer Advisory Council, which speaks directly to clients about our programs and seeks their feedback. And what I hear over and over and over and over again, and anybody who talks to people who are experiencing homelessness will hear this, is that they are so grateful for their case manager. They love their case manager. This is the person that cheers for them, that supports them, that guides them. These case managers help them navigate innumerable lists, countless forms, excruciating waits. And unfortunately, that critical relationship has been challenged for many of our shelter clients. One of the shelter case management positions in our shelter sat vacant for almost all of the last year. The other case managers in our program burn themselves out supporting more than their full caseload of clients so that they can make sure that everyone gets covered. We pull case managers and staff from other programs in order to help. Every shelter client is assigned a case manager, but covering the work by asking people with already full caseloads to handle more is not the same thing as having a fully staffed team. Understaffing really harms our clients. That relationship is the critical thing. It is the secret sauce. It is what makes it possible for people to overcome these incredible burdens and move back into housing. It harms our staff who are trying to do this work. It harms our organizations, and ultimately it harms our communities. It harms your communities. The shelter case management position at Columbus House that's been open requires a bachelor's degree or equivalent experience, and it starts at $19.23 or a total annual salary just under $40,000 a year. With unemployment below 44%, the number of qualified people who can afford to do this emotionally and technically demanding work for $40,000 are few, and we're so intensely grateful for those that do it. I know this group hears from every nonprofit sector and that we all sound the same to you guys after a while. There are so many needs in our state, and there are so many worthy efforts that need funding. And what I can tell you as an entity that is funded by both DOH and DMIS and other sources of funding, DOH funding for shelter services is very paltry compared to what the state provides similar services through other agencies. And I really would love if this committee would do some investigation and research to learn just how poorly funded shelter services and outreach services are in the state compared to other things that are funded. We aren't asking for other types of programs to be given less. In fact, I support the Alliance's request for an across-the-board increase, but you're talking about a system that is already far below everybody else. A 5% increase doesn't put us on a level playing field when it comes to competing to hire excellent staff to do similar roles.
Thank you,
I've been
Margaret.
super grateful to hear last sentence.
I appreciate you being with us and your message, and we understand it clearly. I just need to move along.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Juan Colin with us from Young Legends? Colon.
Good evening, everyone. Juan Colon. I am a Hartford resident, born and raised. I'm also here with Young Legends. You guys heard from two of my co-leads. So what I'm basically here to say is that Young Legends have been thriving. We been here for a while. We started off as two groups. I'm going to give you a little background just because, you know, I've been here quite a while, been to a couple of these meetings. But I never had spoken out like this. But we're thriving. Like my co-leader said, we have another cohort that we just graduated, and hopefully, if you guys keep this funding going, we can potentially get more Young Legends in Hartford. One reason is because I wouldn't be here today without that funding. I wouldn't be here today without Young Legends. I wouldn't be here today without the backbones that we need in this community. And United Way is my backbone. You know, they give me plenty of opportunities, opportunities to improve myself as far as resume building, you know, empowering other youth. I see myself on different flyers and different businesses. That gives me hope, and that also gives people in the community hope because they know that I'm from here. Sorry, y'all. It gets deep for me because I've been here for a while, and we're not asking for you guys to increase the budget nor decrease it. We would like it to sustain what it is that you guys are offering, which was that 2 million mark. And I'm gonna keep it light and sweet because, like I said, you just heard from my two co-leaders, and we just really want to push that. You guys, we want you guys to help us. So without us working for you guys, there is no helping us. You know what I mean? We need our inputs to be there. We need to be at these meetings. We need to be at these the appropriation committees. We're trying to get numbers. You know what I mean? This is the most that I've seen Young Legends on a meeting sheet. You know what I mean? 3 individuals. We started at 1 coming here. You know what I mean? So I'm coming from a personal aspect, but it's definitely a holistic thing because we're all coming for the same thing, same marathon, same however you classify this movement or the works that you do as far as the community works. So I just want to leave you guys with that, and I just really hope you guys keep this funding going for United Way and put you guys' hopes in our hands because we do have it. We are knowledgeable. We do speak the youth language. So, you know, I'm on the older spectrum, but I'm still here and I'm not going anywhere until I see there's a better outcome, and we're getting there. We started somewhere, didn't really get anywhere because of COVID, but we're coming back stronger. So that's my testimony, and like I said, I wish you guys really keep that budget going.
Thanks very much for being with us, Juan, and a great representation for the Young Legends, you and your colleagues here tonight. And I understand the wait is long, but it is appreciated, and your words are taken very seriously. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
I'd like to invite David Green from the Connecticut Arts Alliance. Good evening, David.
Good evening, Senator Hartley and members of the committee. My name is David Green, a 20-year resident of Fairfield County and recently retired head of the Cultural Alliance of Fairfield County, a coalition of some 300 cultural nonprofits and 250 artists. Currently, I serve on the board of the Connecticut Arts Alliance, the arts advocacy nonprofit that works closely with the Connecticut Tourism Coalition and Connecticut Humanities to produce the comprehensive arts, culture, and tourism funding roadmap that would much more equitably fund the arts, culture, and tourism industry in our state. First, I want to thank the governor for the proposed $1 million in additional tourism marketing funds, which I trust you will accept. But I ask, where is tourism without arts and culture? Since COVID, the arts have had a greatly augmented impact on our communities, notably in the areas of mental health, loneliness, and where there are the greatest inequities in our society. The arts, whether created or experienced, have an incredible power to bring people together and to focus the attention on the here and now, helping those who are struggling to find harmony and self-respect. The 2022-23 Connecticut Cultural Fund succeeded for 2 years in investing in over 700 organizations in 59 towns and 141 districts. This wonderfully equitable cultural fund wasn't supported last year. Rather, money was poured into line items, mostly to well-established larger organizations, just 70 organizations in 24 towns, instead of 735 in 59 towns. What a loss. Now, we're not asking for the elimination of line items, but rather for a larger investment that is spread more fairly. We should all know now what an economic impact the arts have on our communities. Each dollar invested brings back incredible returns. Spreading the wealth will bring in even larger returns. Just non-profit cultural organizations and their audiences spent $954 million across Connecticut in 2022, employing over 16,000 people, yielding some $550 million in state tax revenue. We're not begging for money, we're asking for investment in this economic activity. I know organizations that, because of the Cultural Fund, were able to hire needed staff and respond to community needs with programs for the elderly, for kids, and everyone in between. Now they've had to drastically cut back. Organizations struggle, directors are desperate for development staff to bring in private and public funds to keep the fires burning. We again thank the governor for the proposed help with tourism marketing, but ask you to please consider a wider and more effective strategy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thanks for being with us this evening. Alyssa Frazier. Is Alyssa with us? No, do not see her. Amy Casavana Hall from the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness.
I am here.
Oh, hey, Amy, how are you?
Great. Thank you so much. Second to last. Yeah. So good evening, and thank you, Senator Hartley and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Amy Casavina Hall. I'm a resident of Cheshire, Connecticut, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness. Thank you for the opportunity to support HB 5048, an act adjusting the state budget for the biennium. You've heard from so many of my colleagues this evening. I'll try not to repeat what they've said, but just underscore the importance of the case. Over the last 10 years, I've been involved in our state's effort to solve for homelessness, either in my personal or my professional life, and I've been really proud of the results we've achieved. Connecticut has been a leader in the nation in terms of keeping people out of homelessness and housing people. And we have to remember, we decreased annual homelessness by 62% from 2012 to 2021. And thank you, because you made the investments over those years that made that possible. But as you've heard over and over again this evening, that trend has stopped. Connecticut has seen a 14% increase in the rise of homelessness year over year since 21. You know, once we celebrated permanently housing veterans and very vulnerable people, helping parents with children remain stably housed. And now we actively track how many kids and families are living on the streets, in cars and tents this winter. That was just unthinkable just a few years ago. We track the shocking increase of seniors and elders being evicted and losing housing, and the lack of shelter to help them right now in the immediate, and the lack of housing to help them find long-term stability. Connecticut is facing both a lack of affordable housing and an underfunded homeless response system that's under-equipped to provide safety and dignity. You know, I thank this committee for your leadership to understand and respond to the lack of affordable housing in Connecticut. This issue is built over decades and it will take time to correct, but I ask that you act now to preserve the existing funding in the Department of Housing line items and fund the request to annualize $20 million in new funding to support the Connecticut homelessness legislative agenda. You have heard about these line items, $5 million annually for cold weather emergency response. And, you know, we know winter is going to come every year, yet we don't have those resources committed annually so we can plan and help make sure communities are prepared to help people, for we know what will come, freezing temperatures and life-threatening situations. 13 million annually to invest in the people and the orgs that make the homeless response system work, the shelters, the street outreach, community hubs, and the regional cans. You know, they've really coordinated our work. They've built efficiencies and they've built equity across the system. And $2 million annually for the flexible funds that provide people at the door of homelessness exactly what they need immediately, money that can be used to plan, to stay where they are, or to get someplace safe. Thank you so much for your continued work on this issue, your leadership, and for the opportunity to testify this evening.
Amy, thanks for being with us, and bid you a good evening and a good
Thank you.
weekend. Thank you much. I believe that this is the conclusion of our public hearing for conservation and development. And I want to thank all my colleagues and particularly our staff of the Appropriations Committee for once again another yeoman